I'll announce when we're officially live.
Should we all go live?
And then what I'll do is I'll talk about the charity, put yourselves on mute, and then you can go live on your individual devices. I know like Kat, for example, right now is live.
Don't overpay for camera gear. WikiBuy can save you money.
What is this?
It's a browser extension.
Oh, this is my computer. Sorry. That's
What is this?
yeah, an advertisement on a YouTube video. Sorry. Make sure if yeah. Okay, we are live. We are officially live.
No.
If there's always a little bit of chaos. Who are we waiting on? Let me just make sure. I have to like look at the thumbnail and make sure that we have everyone.
Oh wait, no, we're missing Andy.
And
Ali.
We're missing Ali. Yeah, here's Ali right now. And then, yeah, we're missing Andy. Ali.
Are you guys doing it? Are you doing the thing now?
Are we going live?
We're live, so people can actually see us right now. We're just waiting for Andy to come on to this. Andy. So people are seeing us. I'm going to talk about the charity in a minute. If all of you guys want to right now, just go mute on yours and go live on your Instagrams or whatever have you. I will be contacting Andy in the meantime. So we're set, and then we'll be set. We'll start reading the play very soon. You guys all rock. Thanks, people who are watching. In the meantime, those who are watching, please, please, please go to actingforacause.org. Last time we didn't have enough donations compared to what I expected or wanted out of such an amazing viewership. So before I start talking about the charity, just go to actingforacause.org. Do it. If everyone right now donated $5, let me see how many people are watching this. Whoa, we would have $10,000 to donate. That would be more than any individual reading. So
$5.
Go donate $5 or 20 or whatever you can.
Listen to this beautiful man. There we go.
So we're just waiting for Andy. I'm gonna give this quick call and then we'll be set. Hey, Andy. You almost in? Same link. We're waiting on Andy Allo, a wonderful actress, for those who are viewing, and that's why we are not talking yet. And everyone else is going live on their individual things while I'm talking to you all here on the screen. My lovely, lovely viewers, you all rock. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Brando Crawford. I founded this project because of the quarantine and the shelter in place, and I wanted to make a little impact, a little different.
Is it? You guys are all doing it live.
We are just.
Does it go to your story? Does it just go on there?
Yeah, with live, it goes to each individual's phone, and then they like it notifies them, and then you have to like, I think it's like a minute minimum, and then it will save it on your story too.
Just let me know when you're done. If it goes to my story, I'm not somebody.
Oh yeah. 1 second. I'm gonna quickly call out Andy, and then I'll check out. Sorry.
Everyone teach Jacob how to use Instagram.
I just turned it down, and I didn't know you were all.
Can someone check Jacob's Instagram right now?
Didn't even go live. We all just went live on Instagram. What are you doing?
No, I did.
Oh, you did.
You did. I got notified. I'm a follower.
Drinking tea.
Does it go on? Does it go onto your story?
It's not on your story.
It's so I think there's like a minimum amount. Andy.
Why doesn't it go onto your story? Why can't you do that anymore? Couldn't you used to be able to do that, right?
Seriously, back in the golden days of social media.
We are having a read of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice.
Oh, it has to be a minute long.
We got amazing people on board.
Thank you, Isabel.
Excuse the beard.
All right, I'm checking.
My God,
I wonder if Andy is.
We have.
Hope everything's okay, Andy.
Melissa Barrera, Madelaine Petsch, Matthew Postlethwaite, Orly Cravallo, Daniel Newman, Catherine McNamara, Ronan Rubenstein, Jacob Elordi, fellow Aussie, Sydney Lemon, Lexi Underwood, and Brando Crawford, who's running the show. Are we starting?
Look at those outfits.
Andy, where is Andy?
Oh shit, I was on audio. Was I on audio?
Yeah. Andy's in. Andy's in.
Pronunciation.
I like that all the ladies got like some kind of third or sixth sense to be like, oh, we should all wear white. Yeah, that feels about timely. Or something.
We are.
Andy, can you hear me? Are you frozen? There we go. Andy, how are you?
Yes. Hi.
You made it.
Yes. Yes.
You all
Let
rock.
me just fix.
Someone.
I just need to change my internet to a more stable connection.
You're good. You're
sorry.
good. We're everyone's here. Everyone who's watching live right now, don't leave right now. We are just making sure everything is stable and set because we want to be with you for the next 2 acts of a play. So I guess to start off, Andy, do you mind if I talk a little bit about the charity while you're working on that? There's no rush on your end. I just wanted to make sure you were here.
Absolutely. Yes.
Excellent. All right, so everyone who's viewing right now, some people who already are fans of our little movements, some people who are completely new to this. My name is Brando Crawford, and I am a producer from Chicago, Illinois. When we got to the first week of the quarantine, I was having horrible anxiety, as many of you probably have. And I realized that in every moment of despair, there's a chance, an opportunity to make a difference. And as an artist, it's kind of an interesting position to be in because you feel very privileged to be in the position you're in. And then came this idea for Acting for a Cause, a play reading series to raise money and make impact. And we realized we could make a difference. We could make art at the same time during a time where art is, especially live art or live theater, is scarce. And we put together our very first reading. We actually have someone who is from the first reading here, Elordi Carvalho, who is just so amazing. She's been in every other one of these readings. At the very end, I'm gonna just say a little word about each of these actors because they are all so incredible. We're very honored and have just so much gratitude for, I wish I could just talk about you all right now before the reading, but we're gonna be getting to the reading pretty soon. The charity, which is very important. If everyone viewing right now, I mentioned this at the beginning, we have 5,000 live viewers at this very moment, and it's increasing every second. So if every single one of you just gave $5, which did not happen last time was really weak. We had the biggest viewership for Romeo and Juliet, and no one really showed up for I mean, people did, but it was not, there was no comparison. It was not a great donor base. And so we, just please find it somewhere in yourself to grab a credit card and go to actingforacause.org and click donate now, which is in the menu. If you're on your phone, on mobile, you see a few lines and you say donate now and do something, $5, $25, whatever you can do, and we will make a difference together. The monies go to the EIF, which is a nationally registered charity, the Entertainment Industry Foundation. It was founded by the Warner Brothers, and it was founded in this exact spirit of activism, artists and activism. They really do mesh together. And I'm readmitting Kat because that just happened. So sorry to Del. It was founded by Humphrey Bogart and Joan Crawford and all these legendary actors. And then slowly but surely, I feel like, that particular foundation has gone in a different direction. And when they contacted me about doing a little bit of having us choose them as our registered charity, it just made total sense. It was the initial intention of this foundation. And then, so half of the money will be going towards arts education, which is very important, especially now when programs are going to be getting cut by the dozen. I mean, the first programs to get cut are always arts programs. And then the second half of the funds raised will be going towards Mount Sinai Hospital in Chicago. For those of you who don't know, in Chicago, there's a problem within a problem. More than 75% of reported cases are from low-income backgrounds, which means that there is a pattern. And when a pattern is going on, it's our responsibility to stop it in the moment. I don't want history to look back at us and say, look at this pandemic, we did pretty okay, but every single low-income family wasn't communicated with, there wasn't anything properly done, and hospitals have so much power to make sure that we stop this issue, this problem within a problem in Chicago. And that's 75% of reported cases. Imagine how many unreported cases there are. Imagine like a father of a family who is the breadwinner, or a single mother who's the breadwinner of a family and is in the hospital right now and has no idea where any funds to feed her kids are going to come from, let alone their chance of survival. And these hospitals are funded, frankly and unfortunately, by individual donations for the most part. What they get from the state is nothing compared to what we can give. So please, please, please make a difference, make a donation, actingforacause.org, actingforacause.org, actingforacause.org. Thank you all so much. Without further ado, we will start presenting the play, the reading. I just want to make sure that everyone, I think we have, are we waiting on Daniel right now at this very instance? Daniel, are you around?
Yes, I'm coming.
Perfect. You rock. Thank you, man. You rock. Andy,
Brando?
all what? Yeah, go ahead.
Should we change our names here? Can we change our names
Yes.
to our
So
characters?
everyone can right click or scroll over your name, and then you click the 3 dots, rename, and you can put it as your character. Just for the viewers, some of us are playing multiple characters. A lot of us are playing, there's certain scenes where the townspeople kind of come together and it helps narrate. So we suddenly become a more generic person for a moment. I do, and most of the cast does, with the exception of Elizabeth, Mrs. Bennet, and Darcy, played by Jacob Elordi. And there are also multiple characters, like, for example, Lexi will be playing Mary, Bennett, and Charlotte, and there will be a slight change of appearance, but we would like for everyone to join us in suspending disbelief. You know, every single time, every moment in theater history, you know, you can go to Broadway right now and see a show that's funded with millions of dollars, but there was times, you know, in history where theater, you didn't have money and you just suspended disbelief in a similar way to what we're doing right now. So, you know, I'm just very honored to be in a moment of difficulty doing something with what the circumstances, as much as the circumstances allow. So are we, Andy, I don't know if you already notified your peeps, but right before you joined, we were kind of doing that.
Yes, I did.
You're all set. Perfect. Everyone else, any other questions? Melissa, anything?
Daniel, you have one job. You
All right,
change
guys.
your name.
Oh, doing it right now.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead. We're gonna start Act 1. I'm gonna pull up the script on my end. And,
One job.
you will
Do it, Tane.
Everyone knows which town person they are, correct?
Yes. Are we aware of this? Okay.
Yes.
4. Okay. Excellent. Excellent. All right. Pride and Prejudice, Act 1.
Such news! Have you heard? It's something rather extraordinary.
Emerson's a bankrupt, I know.
Oh, it's not that.
Miss King has inherited £10,000.
And is suddenly becoming remarkably charming.
No, it's better still.
Someone died.
No, it's...
A matter of utmost importance.
He arrived in a chaise and 4.
Did you see any furniture?
I counted 5 silver candelabras. 5.
Is he handsome?
Very.
And he wears no wedding ring. Lizzie pushes through them. Townspeople continue to talk underneath her.
It is a truth universally acknowledged that...
Mrs. Bennet, such news!
That a single man in possession of a good fortune must...
New tenant at Netherfield.
That a single man in possession of a good fortune must be...
Young man?
That a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. It is very vexing when one has a particularly good turn of phrase to be interrupted. I'm sure you would agree.
His name is Bingley.
We know each other so well, after all. And so, dear friends, I have complete confidence in your approbation when I add that, however little known of the views of such a man may be upon his entering the neighborhood,
He has 5,000 a year.
the truth is so well fixed in the minds of the surrounding families that he is considered the property of some one or other of their daughters.
The townspeople exit to find their daughters.
Jane!
Anne!
Marissa!
Harriet!
Enters Jane with Lydia, Kitty, and Mary.
You see?
Jane, there you are. And Lydia, Kitty, Mary, Lizzie? Ah, Lizzie, be a little quicker, for heaven's sake. I have such news for your father. Mr. Bennet! Mr. Bennet! My dear Mr. Bennet, have you heard that Netherfield Park is let at last?
I have not.
Do you want to know who has taken it?
You want to tell me, and I have no objection to hearing it.
Why, my dear, you must know Mrs. Long says that Netherfield is taken by a young man of large fortune from the north of England, and he is to take possession before Michaelmas.
What is his name?
Bingley. What a fine thing for our girls.
How so? How can it affect them?
My dear Mr. Bennet, how can you be so tiresome? You must know that I'm thinking of his marrying one of them.
Is that his design in settling here?
Design? Nonsense. How can you talk so? But it is very likely that he may fall in love with one of them, and therefore you must visit him as soon as he comes.
I see no occasion for that. You and the girls may go, or you may say them by themselves, which perhaps would still be better, for as you are as handsome as any of them, Mr. Bingley might like you the best of the party.
My dear, you flatter me. I certainly have had my share of beauty, but I do not pretend to be anything extraordinary now. When a woman has 5 grown-up daughters, she ought to give over thinking of her own beauty.
In such cases, a woman has not often much beauty to think of.
But my dear, you must indeed go and see Mr. Bingley when he comes into the neighbourhood.
It is more than I engage for, I assure you.
But consider your daughters. Only think what an establishment it would be for one of them. Indeed, you must go, for it will be impossible for us to visit him if you do not.
You are over-scrupulous, Shirley. I dare say Mr. Bingley will be very glad to see you, and I will send a few lines by you to assure him of my hearty consent to his marrying whichever he chooses of our girls, though I must throw in a good word for my little Lizzie.
I desire you will do no such thing. Lizzie is not a bit better than the others, and I am sure she's not half as handsome as Jane, nor half so good-humoured as Lydia, but you're always giving her the preference.
They have none of them much to recommend them. They are all silly and ignorant like other girls, but Lizzie has something more of a quickness than her sisters.
Mr. Bennet, how can you abuse your own children in such a way? You take delight in vexing me. You have no compassion on my poor nerves.
You mistake me, my dear. I have a high respect for your nerves. They are my old friends. I have heard you mention them with consideration these 20 years at least. Mr. and Mrs. Bennet exit. There's a transition into a ball.
Of course, my father visited Mr. Bingley. He was one of the first to do so.
Ah, I knew I should persuade him. Your father loves you girls too well to neglect such an acquaintance. Kitty, fix your hair ribbons.
Yes, Mamma.
Mrs. Melton told Maria Lucas that Mr. Bingley brings 8 ladies to the ball tonight. 8 ladies, Lord!
Yeah, that is a grievous number of ladies indeed. Mr. Bingley is quite sunk in my estimation.
I beg you will not be so pert, Lizzie. And Lydia, pull your bodice up for mercy's sake. Mary, though you are the youngest, Lydia, I dare say Mr. Bingley will dance with you too.
Well, I'm not afraid. Kitty and I have been practicing our steps. But listen, besides 8 ladies, my Aunt Philip said Mr. Bingley is to bring 2 gentlemen.
Far be it from me, sister, to dispute your information, but to my certain knowledge, Mr. Bingley only has 6 guests, his 5 sisters and his cousin.
10.
6.
10.
6.
As the scene changes into the ball, enters Mr. Bingley and Mr. Darcy and Miss Bingley.
1, 2, 3.
Oh.
Mr. Bingley is a handsome young man.
Easy, unaffected manners, to be sure.
And 5,000 a year.
His sister's well looking.
But not so well proportioned. However, his friend.
What is his name?
I overheard him called Mr. Darcy.
He has 10,000 a year, Mr. Darcy, that is.
10,000?
Oh, a fine figure of a man.
Much handsomer than Mr. Bingley.
He's quite the favourite, it seems.
Sir William, introduce him to the company.
Pray. Sir, may I introduce you to some of the lovely ladies that are here among us? There must be some here that you wish to be made known to.
None. I thank you.
How dreadful.
His manners certainly don't compare to Mr. Bingley's.
He has a forbidding, disagreeable countenance.
Mr. Darcy is the proudest, most conceited man in the world.
A man who is above being pleased is a man with whom no one else will be pleased either. What do you think of him? Exactly.
Lizzie?
Pray excuse me, my dear good friend, Charlotte Lucas.
She goes over to Charlotte and they are arrested by the Darcy Bingley conversation following.
Come, Darcy. I must have you dance. I hate to see you standing about by yourself in this stupid manner. You would much better dance.
Certainly shall not. You know how I detest it unless I am particularly acquainted with my partner. In such an assembly as this, it would be insupportable.
I would not be so fastidious as you are for an entire kingdom. Upon my honor. I never met with so many pleasant girls in all my life as I have this evening. And there are several of them, you see, who are uncommonly pretty.
Well, you were dancing with the only handsome girl in the room.
She's the most beautiful creature I ever beheld. But there is one of her sisters just behind you who is very pretty and, dare I say, very agreeable. Do let me ask my partner to introduce you.
Which do you mean? She is tolerable, but not handsome enough to tempt me. You had better return to your partner and enjoy her smiles, for you are wasting your time with me.
Exits Darcy and Bingley, and there's a focus on Lizzie and Charlotte. They look at each other and laugh.
Lowering.
Dreadful indeed, though one cannot wonder that so a very fine young man with family, fortune, everything in his favor should think highly of himself. He has a right to be proud.
True. And I could easily forgive his pride if he had not mortified mine.
Pride is a very common failing, I believe. By all that I have ever read, I'm convinced that human nature is particularly prone to it. Pride and vanity are very different things, however. Oh, wait! Pride relates more to our own opinion of ourselves. Vanity to what we would have others think of us. Self-esteem, on the other hand.
Exits all from ball, and there's lights up on Mr. Bennet, and Mrs. Bennet approaches him with alacrity.
Oh, my dear Mr. Bennet, we have had a most delightful evening. Most excellent ball. I wish you'd been there. Jane was so admired. Nothing could be like it. Everybody said how well she looked. And Mr. Bingley thought her quite beautiful and danced with her twice. Only think of that, my dear. She was the only creature in the room that he asked a second time. First of all, he asked Charlotte Lucas, though he did not admire her at all. Indeed, nobody can, you know. Hardly a penny to her name and plain as butter. Besides, but he seemed quite struck with Jane as she was going down the dance. So he inquired who she was and got introduced and asked her for the next two. Then the 2/3 he danced with Miss King, and the 2/4 with Maria Lucas, and the 2/5 with Jane again.
If I had any compassion for me, he would not have danced half as so much, for God's sake. Say no more of his partners. Oh, that he had sprained his ankle in his first dance. There's lights down on Mr. and Mrs. Bennet, and up on Jane and Lizzie.
What did you think of him? Is he not just what a young man ought to be? Sensible, good-humoured, lively.
He's also handsome, which a young man ought likewise to be if he possibly can.
I was very flattered by his asking me to dance a second time. I did not expect such a compliment.
Did not you? I did for you. But that is one great difference between us. Compliments always take you by surprise. And me, never. I can tell Mama is already planning a great wedding at Netherfield.
Oh, Lizzie, you must not talk so.
Well, one cannot blame her after all. 5 girls to marry off and hardly £1,000 between us. That wretched entail will drive Mamma to desperate measures some day, I am sure of it.
'Tis very hard on her.
And on us too, for we must listen to her constant repining. She cannot understand the entail. It is the hardest thing in the world that Mr. Bennet's own daughters cannot inherit his estates. And how none of us had the foresight to be born a boy she'll never comprehend.
Lizzie, let us speak of something more agreeable.
Mr. Bingley, then. He is certainly charming, and I give you leave to like him. You have liked many a stupider person.
Lizzie.
Oh, you are a great deal too apt, you know, to like people in general. You never see a fault in anybody.
I always speak what I think.
I know you do. And it is that which makes me wonder. with your good sense, to be so honestly blind to the follies of others. And so, you like Miss Bingley too, do you? Her manners are not equal to his.
Certainly not at first, but she is a very pleasing woman when you converse with her.
Lights down on Lizzie and Jane and up on the Bingley party.
Oh, what a dull, tedious, insupportable evening that was. And the conversation, really, there was hardly a person worth speaking to. Do you not agree, Mr. Darcy?
There was no one worth speaking to.
Well, I never met with pleasanter people or prettier girls in all my life. Come, Darcy, you must admit the elder Miss Bennet to be an angel.
She's certainly pretty, but she smiles too much.
A sweet girl, though the mother is atrocious, and her uncle is in trade, and she has another uncle, an attorney who lives somewhere near Cheapside. Isn't that the capital?
If they had uncles to fill all Cheapside, it would not make them one jot less agreeable.
But it would very materially lessen their chance of marrying men of any consideration in the world.
Really now?
Oh, Charles, all are agreed that Miss Bennet is a paragon, indeed. I quite look forward to meeting her again. One must entertain oneself somehow.
There's a transition into a second ball. Enters the townspeople and Lizzie watches them.
Do you notice Miss Jane Bennet is wearing a new bracelet?
It must be glass.
And I saw Miss Bennet buying her 3 pairs of silk stockings at the dressmaker's.
No doubt for this very ball.
But yesterday, I was with her at the chandler shop and she declined her usual beeswax candles and chose tallow.
Much cheaper.
Instead,
Mrs. Bennet has grand ambitions.
I hope they will not outstrip her means.
A dance begins. Darcy watches and he is approached by Sir William.
Ah, Mr. Darcy, you are most welcome to my humble abode. What a charming amusement for young people this is. There is nothing quite like dancing after all. I consider it one of the first refinements of a polished society.
Certainly, Sir William. And it has the advantage also of being in vogue amongst the less polished societies of the world. Every savage can dance.
We focus on Charlotte and Lizzie, who are watching Bingley and Jane.
Bingley likes your sister undoubtedly, but he may never do more than like her if she does not help him on.
Oh, but Charlotte, she does help him on, as much as her nature will allow.
She hides her feelings. There are few who have heart enough to really be in love without encouragement.
If I can perceive her regard for him, he must be a simpleton indeed not to discover it too.
Remember, Eliza, that he does not know Jane's disposition as you do.
True. And as yet, she cannot even be certain of the degree of her own regard, nor of its reasonableness. She has known him only a fortnight.
Well, I wish Jane success with all my heart. And if she were married to him tomorrow, I think she would have a good of chances happiness, as if she would be studying his character for 12 months. Happiness in marriage is entirely a matter of chance, and it is better to know as little as possible of the defects of the person with whom you are to pass your life.
Oh, Charlotte, you make me laugh. But it is not sound. You know it is not sound, and that you would never act in this way yourself.
My dear Miss Eliza, why are you not dancing? Mr. Darcy, you must allow me to present this young lady to you as a very desirable partner. You cannot refuse to dance, I am sure, when so much beauty is before you.
Father, please.
Indeed, sir, I have not the least intention of dancing. I entreat you to not suppose that I am wishful of a partner.
I would be most obliged, Miss Bennet, if you would honor me.
Truly, sir, I do not mean to dance.
But you excel so much in the dance, Miss Eliza, that it is cruel to deny me the happiness of seeing you, and this gentleman can have no objection. I am sure to oblige us for 1/2 hour.
Ah, Mr. Darcy is all politeness.
Indeed. But considering the inducement, we cannot wonder at his complaisance. For who would object to such a partner?
Who indeed?
Well, yes. Excuse me, dear sir.
Miss Bingley approaches Darcy.
I can guess the subject of your reverie.
I should imagine not.
You're considering how insupportable it would be to pass many evenings in this manner, in such society, and indeed, I am quite of your opinion.
On the contrary, my mind was more agreeably engaged. I've been meditating on the very great pleasure which a pair of fine eyes in the face of a pretty woman can bestow.
And what lady has the credit of inspiring such reflections?
Miss Elizabeth Bennet.
Miss Elizabeth Bennet? I am all astonishment. How long has she been such a favorite? And pray, when am I to wish you joy?
That is exactly the question which I expected you to ask. A lady's imagination is very rapid. It jumps from admiration to love, from love to matrimony in a moment. I knew you would be wishing me joy.
Darcy exits and Miss
Nay.
follows.
Nay. If you're so serious about it, I shall consider the matter as absolutely settled. You will have a charming mother-in-law indeed.
As Miss Bingley exits, she hands a note to Jane, which Jane opens and reads. Enters Mrs. Bennet, followed by Lizzie, Mary, Mr. Bennet, and Lydia.
Well, Jane, who's that letter from? What's it about? What does it say?
It's from Miss Bingley. She says,
My dear friend, if you are not so compassionate as to dine today with me, I shall be in danger of falling into complete decline. My brother and Mr. Darcy are away, visiting the officers.
Visiting the officers?
A military regiment has just arrived in Meryton. Very exciting.
Oh, I do hope we'll see Captain Carter today. He is divinely handsome.
From all that I collect by your manner of talking, you must be the silliest girl in the country. I have suspected it for some time, but now I am convinced.
Sir, can I have the carriage?
No, no, my dear. You had better go on horseback, because it seems likely to rain, and then you must stay the night.
That would be a good scheme if you were sure that they would not offer to send her home.
Oh, but the gentleman will have Mr. Bingley's carriage to go to Meryton.
I had much rather go in the coach.
But, my dear, your father cannot spare the horses, I'm sure. They are wanted in the farm, Mr. Bennet, are they not?
Sisters exit, and Mr. and Mrs. Bennet move, and Lizzie remains.
Poor Jane was obliged to go on horseback.
Have a lovely time, my dear. We will hope for rain.
And her hopes were answered. My sister had not been gone long before it rained. Hard.
Oh, this was a lucky idea of mine indeed.
Lights up on Jane in a bedridden position. Lydia hands Lizzie a note.
My dearest Lizzie, I find myself very unwell this morning, which I suppose
is to be imputed by my getting wet through yesterday. My kind friends will not hear of my returning home till I am better.
Well, my dear, if your daughter should have a dangerous fit of illness, if she should die, it would be a comfort to know that it was all in pursuit of Mr. Bingley and under your orders.
Nonsense! People do not die of little trifling colds. As long as she stays there, it is all very well.
I am sure she is very ill, or she would have come home. I must see her.
Lizzie, the horses are at the farm.
Then I will walk to Netherfield.
Walk? In 3 miles of mud? How can you think of such a thing? You will not be fit to be seen when you get there.
I shall be very fit to see Jane, which is all I want.
The Bennets exit and enter some townspeople, watching Lizzie out. Where is Miss Elizabeth Bennet going in such haste?
Haven't you heard? Her sister lies abed with fever at Netherfield. I've no doubt she goes to visit. Huh. She is a very excellent walker.
If only that could get her a husband. Her petticoat and stockings will be ruined.
£2, 6pence.
Darcy, Miss Bingley, and Bingley enter Netherfield. Exits Lizzie out of breath.
Miss Elizabeth, you are welcome to Netherfield.
How kind of you to attend to your dear sister, and to come all this way in such dirt.
Oh, it is nothing, I assure you. How is Jane?
Miss Bennet slept ill last night, I'm afraid. She's very feverish and not well enough to leave her room.
Then, with your permission, I will go to her.
Exits Liz.
Really, she looked almost wild. Her hair so untidy, so blousy, and her petticoat 6 inches deep in mud, I am absolutely certain.
Your picture may be very exact, Caroline, but all this was lost on me. I thought Miss Elizabeth looked remarkably well when she came into the room.
I'm afraid, Mr. Darcy, that this adventure has rather affected your admiration of her fine eyes.
Not at all. They were brightened by the exercise.
There's a focus on Lizzie and Jane, and Miss Bingley joins them.
I've been with Jane all afternoon. She still looks so ill and feverish. Just stay longer. I fear I must not trespass on your hospitality any further.
I'm sorry you can't stay. Shall I call the carriage?
You must leave, I know, but I felt so much more recovered with you here. I don't know how it is. I pray you forgive me.
Jane, hush. You must lie quietly.
Oh dear. It quite torments me to see you in such distress, dear friend. Perhaps you'd better stay, Miss Eliza, for the present at least. And when you have made your sister more comfortable, I do hope you will join us in the drawing room.
There's a transition to the drawing room. Darcy is writing a letter. Miss Bingley and Bingley play cards, and Lizzie joins them.
Will you play, Miss Elizabeth?
No, thank you. I shall read, if you don't mind.
Miss Eliza Bennet despises cards. She's a great reader and has no pleasure in anything else.
I deserve neither such praise nor such censure. I am not a great reader, and I have pleasure in many things.
In nursing your sister, I am sure you have pleasure, and I hope it will soon be increased by seeing her quite well.
Is Miss Darcy grown since spring? Will she be as tall as I am?
Yes, she's now about Miss Bennet's height, or rather taller.
How I long to see her again. Such a countenance, such manners, and so extremely accomplished for her age.
It is amazing to me how young ladies can all be so very accomplished.
All young ladies accomplished? My dear Charles, what do you mean?
Well, they all paint tables, cover screens and net purses. I am sure I never hear of a young lady spoken of for the first time without being informed that she is very accomplished.
I cannot boast of knowing more than half a dozen in the whole range of my acquaintance that are really accomplished.
Nor I am sure.
Then you must comprehend a great deal in your idea of what an accomplished woman.
I do.
Oh, certainly. A woman must have a thorough knowledge of music, singing, drawing, dancing, all the modern languages to deserve the word.
And to all this, she must add something more substantial in the improvement of her mind by extensive reading.
I am no longer surprised at your knowing only 6 accomplished women. I rather wonder now at your knowing any.
By the by, Charles, are you really serious in meditating a dance at Netherfield? I am much mistaken if there are not some among us now to whom a ball would be rather a punishment than a pleasure.
If you mean Darcy, he may go to his bed if he chooses. But as for the ball, it is quite a settled thing.
Well, I should like balls infinitely better if they were carried on in a different manner. I would surely be more rational if conversation instead of dancing made the order of the day.
Much more rational, my dear Caroline. But it would not be near so much like a ball.
There's a pause. Miss Bingley throws down her cards and goes over to Darcy.
You write uncommonly fast.
You are mistaken. I write rather slowly.
I'm afraid you do not like your pen. Let me mend it for you.
Thank you, but I always mend my own.
How can you contrive to write so even? Miss Eliza Bennet, Let me persuade you to follow my example and take a turn about the room. I assure you it is very refreshing after sitting so long in one attitude.
Thank you.
Mr. Darcy, will you join us?
I can imagine only two motives for your choosing to walk together, and with either of those motives, my joining you would interfere.
What can he mean? I'm dying to know his meaning. Do you understand him?
No, but depend upon it, he means to be severe on us, and our surest way of disappointing him will be to ask nothing about it.
Mr. Darcy, explain.
Miss Bingley is apparently incapable of disappointing Mr. Darcy in anything.
I'll explain gladly. You either choose this method of passing the evening because you have secret affairs to discuss, or because you are conscious that your figures appear to the greatest advantage in walking. If the first, I should be completely in your way, and if the second, I can admire you much better as I sit here.
Oh, shocking. How shall we punish him for such a speech?
Nothing so easy, if you have but the inclination. Tease him, laugh at him. Intimate as you are, you must know how it is to be done.
But upon my honor, I do not. Tease calmness of my temper and presence of mind. And as to laughter, we will not expose ourselves, if you please, by attempting to laugh without a subject.
Mr. Darcy is not to be laughed at. That is uncommon advantage. And uncommon I hope it will continue, for it would be a great loss to me to have many such acquaintance. I dearly love a laugh.
Miss Bingley has given me credit for more than can be. The wisest and best of men may be rendered ridiculous by a person whose first object in life is a joke.
Oh, I hope I never ridicule what is wise or good. Follies and nonsense do divert me, I own, and I laugh at them whenever I can. But these, I suppose, are precisely what you are without.
Perhaps that is not possible for anyone, but it has been the study of my life to avoid those weaknesses which often expose a strong understanding to ridicule.
Such as vanity and pride?
Yes, vanity is a weakness indeed, but pride, where there is a real superiority of mind, pride will always be under good regulation.
Your examination of Mr. Darcy is over, I presume. And pray, what is the result?
I am perfectly convinced by it that Mr. Darcy has no defect. He owns it himself.
No, I've made no such pretension. I have faults enough. My temper would perhaps be called resentful. My good opinion once lost is lost forever.
Ah, that is a failing indeed. Implacable resentment is a shade on a character. But you have chosen your fault well. I really cannot laugh at it. You are safe from me.
There is, I believe, in every disposition, a tendency to some particular evil which not even the best education can overcome.
And your defect is a propensity to hate everybody.
And yours is willfully to misunderstand them.
Do let us have a little music.
There's a little bit of music, and there's a transition into Netherfield party exits with Lizzie continuing.
I think it's time a letter be written. Mama, as we have been here 4 days and Jane is completely recovered,
I don't believe it.
I beg you that the carriage may be sent.
She must stay at Netherfield till the following Tuesday, which will exactly finish her week.
Jane is determined to go.
I'm sure your father's horses are wanted in the field.
They are wanted in the field much oftener than I can get them.
Let us take Miss Bingley's carriage then.
Jane and Lizzie exit. There's a transition to Longbourn.
I cannot think why you are back here so soon.
I hope, my dear, that you have ordered a good dinner today, because I have reason to expect an addition to our family party.
What do you mean, my dear? I know of nobody coming.
The person of whom I speak is a gentleman and a stranger.
Gentleman and a stranger? It is Mr. Bingley, I am sure.
It is not Mr. Bingley. It is a person whom I never saw in the whole course of my life. About a month ago, I received this letter. It is from mine own cousin, Mr. Collins, who, when I am dead, may turn you all out of this house as soon as he pleases.
Ah, pray do not talk of that odious man or the entail. It is the hardest thing in the world that your estate must be willed away from our own children.
It is certainly a most iniquitous affair, but Mr. Collins' letter suggests some peacemaking propensities. I propose, Mrs. Bennet, that we receive him with kindness. There's a transition, music up, and enters Mr. Collins, who looks all the girls up and down.
I had heard much of your daughter's beauty, Miss Bennet, but in this instance, fame has fallen short of the truth. I have no doubt of your seeing them all in due time well disposed of in marriage.
How peculiar.
Silent,
Be
Kitty.
silent.
Upstairs, now. You are very kind, sir, and I wish with all my heart it may prove so, for else they will be destitute enough. Things are settled so oddly.
You allude perhaps to the entail of this estate?
Ah, sir, I do indeed.
As a clergyman, Miss Bennet, and one who has been so fortunate as to be distinguished by the patronage of the Honorable Lady Catherine de Bourgh, widow of Sir Louis de Bourgh, I feel it in my duty to promote and establish the blessing of peace in all families within the reach of my influence. And while it is my earnest endeavor to demean myself with grateful respect towards her ladyship, she is far from objective to an occasional absence, provided some other clergyman is engaged to do the duty of the day. Therefore, I have come, hoping that the circumstance of my being in line to inherit the Longbourn estate will be kindly overlooked on your side and not lead you to reject my preferred olive branch.
To be sure, Mr. Collins.
I am sensible, madam, of the hardship to my fair cousins, but I assure the young ladies I come prepared to admire them.
Ah.
I can be otherwise than concerned, Miss Bennet, at being the means of injuring your amiable daughters. I have a tidy living, a prosperous congregation, and a most gracious patroness. There I hope, ma'am, that a mistress for my parsonage might be found here at Longbourn. Miss Jane Bennet, perhaps?
My dear Mr. Collins, I must mention, I feel it is incumbent upon me to hint, Jane is likely to be very soon engaged. Now, as to my younger daughters, I cannot positively answer, but...
Miss Elizabeth!
Transition, music. The rest of the Bennet girls join Lizzie and Mr. Collins dressed for a stroll.
Oh, I long to see that handsome Captain Carter. Do you not think he is the divinest creature that has ever worn a uniform, Kitty?
Excepting Mr. Denny.
What a lovely place is Meryton. Such fine straight roads, almost as straight as those on the estate of my esteemed patroness, Lady Catherine de Bourgh.
You seem most fortunate in her acquaintance, sir.
Oh, she is everything that is good and wise. She's reckoned proud by many people, but I have never seen anything but affability in her. I have been invited many times to dine at Rosings, her estate, encompassing more than 1,200 acres. And just last week, she paid a visit to my humble parsonage where she, the condescension, suggested the addition of some shelves in a closet upstairs.
She sounds a most attentive neighbor.
Miss Elizabeth, may I venture to suggest that it is like your perception to say so?
Enters the Colonel Forrester, accompanied by a Mr. Wickham.
Look, there's Colonel Forster.
Who is that he has with him? Colonel Forster! Colonel! Here!
Lydia, please.
As to Miss Bennet, I must make you known to them, Wickham. Mr. Wickham, Miss Bennet. And this is Miss Eliza.
Wickham, how is it that we have never seen you at Meryton before?
I've just come to town, having accepted a commission in the corps.
Ah, this is exactly as it should be. Regimentals will render him completely charming.
Mrs. Bennet!
Why, what a lucky thing. I was just on my way to Longbourn.
Oh, what can be the meaning of it?
It is impossible to imagine.
It is impossible not to wish to know.
Kitty, Jane, come see such a delicious bonnet.
The party moves forward and Lizzie lingers with Wickham.
Have you been able to see much of Meryton, Mr. Wickham?
Yes, indeed. Everything pleases me. My friend Denny first tempted me here with the prospect of good society, which I own is necessary to me. Distraction is vital to one whose hopes have been... Forgive me, but have you known that gentleman long?
Mr. Darcy? About a month. He is a man of very large property in Derbyshire, I understand.
That is true. You could not have met anyone who could give you more certain information on that head than myself. I've been connected with his family in a most particular way since my childhood.
What?
Are you acquainted with him?
Oh, as much as I ever wished to be. I have spent 4 days in the same house with Mr. Darcy. I think him very disagreeable.
Yeah, I have no right to give my opinion. I've known him too long and too well to be fair judge, though I believe your opinion of Mr. Darcy in general would astonish. But perhaps you would not express it quite so strongly elsewhere.
Oh, upon my word, I say no more here than I would in any house in the neighborhood. Everyone is disgusted with his pride. I hope your plan in favor of the corpse will not be affected by his being here.
Oh, no. It is not for me to be driven away by Mr. Darcy.
Mr. Wickham, do swear you will come to my Aunt Phillips tomorrow. It will be such fun. We're going to play whist and drink punch and be very merry together.
Well, I shall be delighted. No, Miss Elizabeth, I have no reason for avoiding Mr. Darcy, but what I might proclaim to all the world, a sense of very great ill usage and most painful regrets at his being what he is.
Delicacy prevents further inquiry. But what an agreeable man, don't you think so? Such pleasing address. I shall hope to learn more of him at my Aunt Phillips.
There's a transition to Mrs. Phillips' party. A servant enters with glasses. Lizzie adroitly snags one and turns to Wickham.
A cup of claret punch, Mr. Wickham?
Thank you most kindly.
You may thank me more substantially by telling me some gallant tale of military endeavor.
I regret to say I have none. To speak the truth, Miss Elizabeth, military life was not what I intended for. The church ought to have been my profession.
Indeed. And what came between you?
Perhaps I should not say.
Oh, but I so wish to know.
Well, it concerns the gentleman that we were speaking of yesterday.
Oh, Mr. Darcy.
Yes, his father, the late Mr. Darcy, was my grandfather. One of the best men I've ever breathed and especially attached to me. My father had given up everything to be of use to Mr. Old Darcy and devoted all of his time to the care of Pemberley Estate. In gratitude to him, and because of his affection for me, the old Mr. Darcy bequeathed me, upon his death, the best church living in his gift. But when the living fell, it was given elsewhere.
Good heavens, but how could his will be disregarded?
There was just such a informality in the terms of the bequest as to give me no hope from the law. A man of honor could not have doubted his intention, but Mr. Darcy chose to doubt it.
What reason did he give?
Oh, that it was a conditional recommendation, that I had forfeited all claim because of extravagance, imprudence, in short, anything and nothing at all.
Oh, how abominable. What can have been his motive?
I have a warm, unguarded temper, and I may have sometimes spoken my opinion of him too freely. I have often also thought that the late Mr. Darcy liked me more, his son less. That might have borne me less favor.
Oh, he deserves to be publicly disgraced.
Sometime or other he will be. But it shall not be by me. Till I can forget his father, I can never defy or expose him.
Wickham! Come here, my boy. We need a thoughtful list.
I am shocked. Shocked and aggrieved. Such a truly good-hearted man to be treated in such manner. I wonder how Mr. Darcy will receive Mr. Wickham at the Netherfield ball.
They have both been deceived, I dare say, in one way or another.
But how could Mr. Wickham invent such history? Names, facts, everything. Besides, there was truth in his looks.
Mr. Darcy cannot be so very bad. No man of common decency could behave in such a manner. Can Mr. Bingley be so mistaken in his character? How terrible for him. One does not know what to think.
Oh, I beg your pardon. One knows exactly what to think.
Oh, Lizzie, the worst luck. Mr. Wickham won't be here tonight.
What? Was he not invited?
I heard from Captain Carter that Mr. Wickham felt it better that he should stay away, to avoid a certain gentleman.
Is Wickham not here? Oh, Lord. I'd set it in my mind to flirt with him all night.
They move away as Lizzie and Charlotte watch the dancing. Kitty exits.
My every prospect for happiness is now completely destroyed.
Oh, Lizzie.
It is true. I have only dancing with my very odd cousin, Mr. Collins, to look forward to. And there he is.
Oh, he does not seem so very odd.
I have not spoken with him yet.
Miss Bennet, I hope you'll give me the pleasure of the next dance.
Of course. Oh, gracious. What have I done?
I dare say you will find a very agreeable partner.
Oh, heaven forbid. That would be the greatest misfortune of all, to find a man agreeable whom one is determined to hate.
Lizzie, don't be such a simpleton. Don't allow your fancy for Mr. Wickham to make you appear unpleasant to a man 10 times his consequence.
Darcy and Elizabeth begin to dance.
It is a very fine ball, is it not?
Indeed.
It is your turn to say something now, Mr. Darcy. It is your turn to say something now, Mr. Darcy. I talked about the dance, and you ought to make some kind of remark on the size of the room or the number of couples.
Whatever you wish me to say, I shall.
Very well. That reply will do for the present. Perhaps by and by I may observe that private balls are much pleasanter than public ones. But now we may be silent.
Do you talk by rule then, while you're dancing?
Sometimes. One must speak a little, you know. It would look odd to be entirely silent for half an hour together. And yet, for the advantage of some, conversation ought to be so arranged that they may have the trouble of saying as little as possible.
Are you consulting your own feelings in this case, or do you imagine that you're gratifying mine?
Both. For I have seen a great similarity in the turn of our minds. We are each of unsocial, taciturn disposition, unwilling to speak, unless we expect to say something that will amaze the whole room.
Well, there's no very striking resemblance to your own character. How near it may be to mine, I cannot pretend to say. You think it a faithful portrait, undoubtedly.
I must not decide on my own performance. When you met us in Meryton the other day, we had just been forming a new acquaintance.
Mr. Wickham is blessed with such happy manners as may ensure his making friends. Whether he may be equally capable of retaining them is less certain.
He has been so unlucky as to lose your friendship, and in a manner which he is likely to suffer from all his life.
The first dance ends, and all applaud.
Ah, I have been most gratified indeed, sir. Such superior dancing is not often seen. I must hope that this pleasure is often repeated, especially when a certain desirable event shall take place. What congratulations will then flow in? Miss Lydia, but why are you not dancing?
The second dance begins. Lizzie and Darcy do not dance.
Sorry. Sir William's interruption has made me forget what we were talking of.
Oh, I do not think we were speaking at all. Sir William could not have interrupted two people who had less to say for themselves. I remember hearing you once say, Mr. Darcy, that your resentment, once aroused, was unappeasable. You are very cautious, I suppose, as to its being created.
I am.
And never allow yourself to be blinded by prejudice?
I hope not.
It is particularly incumbent on those who never change their opinion to be secure of judging properly at first.
May I ask to what these questions tend?
Merely to the illustration of your character. I'm trying to make it out.
Oh, and what is your success?
I do not get on at all.
I could wish, Miss Bennet, that you were not to sketch my character at the present moment, as there is reason to fear that the performance would reflect no credit to either.
But if I do not take your likeness now, I may never have another opportunity.
I would by no means suspend any pleasure of yours.
The dance ends and Darcy leaves Lizzie. Miss Bingley moves towards her.
So, Miss Eliza, I hear you're quite delighted with George Wickham. I find that the young man forgot to tell you that he was the son of old Wickham, the late Mr. Darcy's steward. And let me tell you, however, as a friend, not to give implicit confidence to all his assertions. I do not know the particulars, but I am sure that Mr. Darcy is not in the least to blame. I pity you, Miss Eliza, for this discovery of your favourite's guilt. But really, considering his descent, one could not expect much better.
His guilt and his descent appear by your account to be the same, for I have heard you accuse him of nothing more than of being the son of Mr. Darcy Stewart, and of that I can assure you he informed me himself.
Excuse my interference. It was kindly meant.
Exits Miss Bingley and Mr. Collins comes to Lizzie.
I have found out by a singular accident that there is now in the room a near relation of my patroness. I must pay my respects to him.
You mean Mr. Darcy, but he will consider it a great impertinence for you to introduce yourself.
My dear Elizabeth, I have the highest opinion of your excellent judgment in all matters within the scope of your understanding, but the clergy are not bound by established forms of ceremony. Mr. Darcy!
Darcy and Mrs. Bennet comes forward with Charlotte. Mr. Darcy eventually disengages himself from Mr. Collins and listens to their conversation.
It is absolutely, positively a settled thing. I am in daily expectation of Jane's receiving Mr. Bingley's proposal.
I am very happy for her.
Yes, yes. Such a charming young man, so rich, and it is such a comfort to think how fond...
Mama, please, speak a little lower.
How fond his sister is of Jane. I'm certain she must desire the match as much as I possibly could.
Mama, everyone can hear you.
Hush, Lizzie. And such a promising thing for my younger daughters. And Jane's marrying so greatly must throw them in the way of other rich men.
I am persuaded that Mr. Darcy can hear you quite clearly.
What is Mr. Darcy to me, pray, that I should be afraid of him?
Oh, for heaven's sake, madam, speak lower. What advantage can it be to you to offend Mr. Darcy?
Now let us have some singing. Miss Mary. Wonderful.
Oh dear.
God rest you merry gentlemen, let nothing you dismay. For Jesus Christ our Saviour was born on Christmas Day.
Extremely well, child. You have delighted us long enough.
Thank you.
If I was so fortunate as to be able to sing, I should have great pleasure, I am sure, in obliging the company with an air, for I consider music to be perfectly compatible with the profession of a clergyman. Of course, we cannot be justified in devoting too much of our time to music, for there are certainly other things to be attended to, such as testifying the utmost respect towards anybody connected with his patron's family.
My relatives are determined to expose themselves. Oh, what a wretched night.
Miss Elizabeth?
Oh no. Pray excuse me. Sorry. Excuse me, pardon me. If you could just,
Miss Elizabeth? Miss Elizabeth?
Mr. Collins, do come into the drawing room and give us your opinion on Fordyce's sermon. Come on.
You have my undying gratitude, friend.
Lizzie! Lizzie, where have you been? The carriage is called. This has been a most excellent evening. Allowing for the preparation of settlements, new carriage and wedding clothes, Jane will undoubtedly be settled in Netherfield in the course of 3 months. Oh, my dearest Jane, I knew she could not be born so beautiful for nothing.
The townspeople observe Mrs. Bennet as she exits with Lizzie. There's a transition into Longbourn as townspeople comment.
Well, oh, well, oh, well, it seems that Mr. Jane Bennet may snare at your husband. A pretty face can buy a fortune. Apparently, Miss Bennet is in spirits.
Let us hope she is not in a fool's paradise as well.
Indeed.
Transitions to Lizzie, Mrs. Bennet, and Mary at Longbourn. Enters Mr. Collins.
May I hope, madam, for your interest with your fair daughter Elizabeth, when I solicit for the honor of a private audience with her in the course of this morning?
Oh dear, yes, certainly. I'm sure Lizzie will be very happy. I'm sure she can have no objection. Come, Mary, I want you upstairs.
Oh, dear ma'am, do not go. I beg you will not go. Mr. Collins can have nothing to say to me that anybody may not hear. Indeed, I am going away myself.
Lizzie, I insist upon your staying and hearing Mr. Collins.
Exits Mrs. Bennet and Mary.
Believe me, my dear Elizabeth, that your modesty, so far from doing you any disservice, rather adds to your other perfections. But allow me to assure you that I have your respected mother's permission for this address. Miss Elizabeth, almost as soon as I entered this house, I singled you out as the companion of my future life. But before I am run away by my feelings on this subject, perhaps it would be advisable for me to state my reasons for marrying. First, I think it a right thing for every clergyman in easy circumstances, like myself, to set the example of matrimony in his parish. Secondly, I am convinced it will add greatly to my happiness. And thirdly, which perhaps I ought to have mentioned earlier, it is the particular advice of Lady Catherine de Bourgh, my most noble patroness. These have been my motives, my dear Miss Elizabeth. And now nothing remains for me but to assure you in this most animated language of violence of my affection.
Oh, Mr. Collins, I am very sensible of the honor of your proposals, but it is impossible for me to do otherwise than decline them.
I am not now to learn that this is usual with you ladies to reject the addresses of the man whom you secretly mean to accept when he first applies for your favor.
Upon my word, sir, I do assure you that I am not one of those young ladies who are so daring as to risk their happiness on the chance of being asked a second time. Nay, were Lady Catherine to know me, I am persuaded that she would find me in every respect ill qualified for this situation.
We're certain that Lady Catherine would think so. But I cannot imagine that her ladyship would at all disapprove of you. And perhaps you have even now said as much as a delicate young lady might to encourage my suit.
If what I have said can appear to you in the form of encouragement, I know not how to express my refusal in such a way as may convince you of it being one.
You must give me leave to flatter myself, my dear cousin, that your refusal of my addresses is merely words of course. In spite of your manifold attractions, your person is so unhappily small, just 1,000 pounds in the 4%, that is by no means certain another offer of marriage may ever be made you. And I must therefore attribute your rejection to a wish of increasing my love by suspense, according to the usual practice of elegant females.
Sir, do not consider me now an elegant female intending to plague you, but as a rational creature speaking the truth from her heart.
You are uniformly charming, and I am persuaded that when sanctioned by the express authority of both your excellent parents, my proposals will not fail of being accepted.
Mr. Collins! Oh, Mr. Collins, congratulations.
Thank you, my dear madam. As yet, of course, Miss Elizabeth has not accepted my humble suit.
What? Not accepted you, Mr. Collins? Depend upon it. Lizzie will be brought to reason. She is a very headstrong, foolish girl, and...
Oh, pardon me for interrupting, madam. But if she is really headstrong and foolish, I know not whether she would go altogether to be a desirable wife.
Oh, sir, you quite misunderstand me. Lizzie is only headstrong in such matters as these. I will go directly to Mr. Bennet, who shall very soon settle it. Mr. Bennet! Mr. Bennet! Ah, Mr. Bennet, you're wanted immediately. Mr. Collins wishes to marry Lizzie, but Lizzie declares she will not have Mr. Collins, and Mr. Collins begins to say that he will not have Lizzie.
And what am I to do on the occasion? It seems like a hopeless business.
Tell Lizzie that you insist upon her marrying him.
Child, I understand that Mr. Collins has made you an offer of marriage and that this offer you have refused.
I have, sir.
Your mother insists on you accepting it. Is it not so, Mrs. Bennet?
Yes, or I will never speak to her again.
An unhappy alternative is before you, Elizabeth. Your mother will never see you again if you do not marry Mr. Collins. And I will never see you again if you do.
What do you mean, Mr. Bennet, by talking this way? You promised me to insist upon her marrying him.
My dear, I have two favors to request. First, that you will allow me the free use of my understanding on the present occasion. And secondly, of my room. I shall be glad to have the library to myself as soon as it may be.
I told you, Miss Lizzie, that I should never speak to you again, and you will find me as good as my word. I have no pleasure in talking to undutiful children. Not that I have much pleasure indeed in talking to anybody. Nobody can tell what I suffer, but it is always so. Those who do not complain are never pitied.
Mrs. Bennet exits and Jane enters.
Dearest, I'm sorry.
Yes, I am in disgrace. I fear only news of your engagement will eventually appease her.
Oh, Lizzie.
Do not blush and turn away. Mr. Bingley is in love with you.
Indeed, I've hoped. That is, he... Oh, Lizzie, is he not the finest of men?
You must invite me often to Netherfield.
I shall. Often and often.
I promise to be a splendid aunt to all your children. And
the next scene, till the end of Act 1, is a long passage.
Dearest Jane. Ah, and Miss Eliza. My friend, I come on a sad errand. I'm afraid my brother has gone to London. We are to follow him directly.
But you will return soon.
Alas, I fear not. Do you recall Mr. Darcy's sister, Miss Georgina Darcy? My brother admires her greatly, and I must be frank, dear friends. I feel I am not precipitous in predicting that a certain interesting event, their marriage, in fact, will soon occur.
Enters Sir William.
Such news! Such wonderful, joyous, long-awaiting news!
Enters Charlotte.
Lizzie, I must talk to you.
My daughter Charlotte is engaged to Mr. Collins.
What?
What a wishless joy!
I am the happiest of all men.
you and Mr. Collins? Impossible.
Lizzie, I mean, do you think it incredible that he should be able to procure any woman's good opinion because he was so not happy as to succeed with you?
She will finally be married. Oh, thank God! How wonderful!
I am convinced Lady Catherine will be pleased with my choice.
I am not a romantic, you know. I ask only a comfortable home.
Do join me in hoping for my brother's union with Miss Darcy.
Charlotte will someday live at Longbourn instead of on charity.
Jane, are you quite well?
Everyone is talking.
Pretend you cannot hear.
Miss Bingley and Miss Darcy?
Enters Mrs. Bennet, who goes to the townspeople.
What is that you say?
It is an attachment that would secure the happiness of so many.
Of what are you speaking?
The townsperson group turns its back and Mrs. Bennet goes to Lizzie and Jane.
It is the only recourse for a young woman of small fortune.
Lizzie, I demand you tell me at once. What are they all speaking of?
Mr. Collins is to marry Charlotte Lucas, and Mr. Bingley is gone to London, never to return.
Mr. Bingley? Mr. Collins? Oh, get me my salts!
He collapses dramatically into Mr. Bennet's arms, and thus ends Act 1 of Pride and Prejudice. All right, everyone, all of our actors, please take 5. I'm going to be talking a little bit more about how to do an actual donation, but everyone, because I actually need to get up and use the bathroom too right now, like emergency style. In the meantime, if you know how to actually type in actingforacause.org, do that right now. I will come back though and walk you through the process. I'm gonna share my screen and how a donation might actually look like. But please donate on your own accord right now. If everyone donated, it's insane. We have crazy viewership. On my end, 38,678 people have joined this. This is insane. It's like double what every other reading has been. Daniel's like, yeah, it is insane. Ali, we just passed like double. 38,678.
I've been mass messaging everybody.
So I'm gonna go and come back though, because I need to go emergency style. 1 second.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Oh dear. It would appear I'm the only one here. Shit. I know what I can do. I'll go to the link, right? And I can see all of your comments, right? Yes. Oh, this is a good idea. Hello. Look at the dog. Someone said look at the dog. I'm reading your comments right now, so if you want to say something exciting. I'm very excited to be here. Obviously, we have a great cast. It's been a blast, I gotta say. Got to wear a hat, and it's for a good cause. I don't want to be here anymore. Everyone, please come back. Please.
I'm just hearing from the bathroom. I heard someone talking, and I was like, "What's going on?"
I literally went on, and I was afraid to not be on. But I thank you for coming.
Hello, my dears.
Hello. Welcome back. There was a fly in my house, and it's one of those big flies that's been wanting some of the spotlight. So,
You've played it off really well.
Not a murder hornet.
It's true. I was marveling at your, you didn't skip a beat. You just swatted that fly right out with such.
Ellie, you handled that with grace. I heard
Are we still live now?
I believe we are.
So, thank you, everyone that's watching.
Yeah.
Hey, enjoying it.
Yep. Does anyone want to put their pets on camera? Because I do.
I would.
This is my cat. His name is Rocco.
Oh.
Hi, Rocco.
Hi, Rocco. Hi.
What a beautiful thing. What a beautiful.
He's a good boy.
Pardon me while I use you all as a mirror in true Lydia fashion.
All right. So guys, everyone who is here, I'm going to briefly send everyone to actingforacause.org. And I'm going to do a quick screen share. So I will be the only person visible for a quick second. 1 second here. 1 second. Let me minimize things. I have so many tabs open, but that's okay. Screen share. There we go. All right, screen share, and I'm gonna go full screen, and then I'm gonna go directly to acting. Look at all the tabs I have. That's how crazy I am.
Wow. How many viewers we got right now?
Whoa.
Let me, one second, let me check after this. I'm just gonna quickly show everyone what a donation looks like, and then I will fill everyone in. So I'm gonna go to donate now, and then it brings you directly to the EIF Foundation website, but specifically to a link that goes to, connects to Acting for a Cause. And then I'm gonna make a quick donation because I think this is a cause worth supporting. And I'm gonna make it monthly. Let's do it. Whoever likes to support in this way. And then,
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna quickly, while I fill in this part, I'm gonna stop share, but then it's gonna show the donation at the end. So there's actual proof of doing it. I did this last time and it was a pretty effective strategy, I feel, because if anyone has any hesitation or doesn't want to miss part of the show, I'm off of screen share, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Then right now is the exact moment. If you do this at the same time as me, you are a hero. And I'm not saying that in the lightest way possible. You're literally giving money to the front lines and giving to two very, very important causes. And I would, if you are in the position to consider being a monthly donor, give now. And so I'm gonna go ahead, loading, waiting for, and then it does this. And I'm gonna go ahead and open this up. Hold up, I'm gonna go back to screen share. And what am I doing? Here we go. Your gift means greater impact. And it says, Dear Brando, and blah, blah, blah. And then it shows like, exactly what type of donation you did, and then it goes into the credit card number and address stuff, which I'm not going to show like I did last time, FYI. Whoever was on this last read, actually.
Oh, nice.
Not my credit card, but where I live. So FYI, that's how you do it. And then also, let's see. So Daniel had asked how many people. And we just surpassed 40,000 playbacks, which means 40,000 clicked the link and have lingered on the video for some time, right? 40,000, if everyone gave $1, that's insane. That's more money than we've raised in this entire campaign. So clearly, if you're watching right now, please, please, please make the decision to make a difference. We are we're pretty close to starting back up. I'm just, again, so honored. This group every single group is insane. If you guys want to go back, you go to our website again, and you want to see all the other live readings. They're all just wonderful classics. We started out with The Importance of Being Earnest, featuring Ali E and Alex Wolff and Justice Smith, a really great group. I could go on and on about that cast. We had This Is Our Youth by Kenneth Lonergan, featuring Florence Pugh, and Alex Wolff and Justice returned for that. We had a third reading, which is the third reading was Hamlet. And Hamlet, we had Ali return, and we had Ronan on that one, and we had Willa Fitzgerald as a female Hamlet, and it was this female-focused, wonderful Hamlet. Hari Neff was in it. It was wonderful. Our fourth reading, Romeo and Juliet, featured David Corenswet on the release day of Hollywood. He chose to do a reading class. Mind blown, and he was so amazing. As Romeo, and Margaret Qualley, who is just a great friend, and we had so much back and forth to get her involved with this project, and she did such an amazing job as Juliet. The rest of the cast there, really wonderful, remarkable crowd. And then this reading is just, it's obviously, I'm going to be talking about this one for a long time. Very, very excited to have you all. I think everyone just came back officially.
Did you mention the link is in the YouTube for to donate?
Yeah, so if anyone goes, they don't know where to go to actingforacause.org, actingforacause.org, it is in the description of the video, actingforacause.org, go do it. If everyone wants to, actually now's a good time to, if you've got your drinks and you've gone to the bathroom and you've stretched and introduced your cat to us, which is very important to me if you have a pet. Thank you, Ali. This is a great time for actors to go live again. I am going to go live. So I'm going to put myself on mute and just remind people to join again, because we always get a second wave during intermission. And these people can start from the beginning if they haven't seen it yet. 1 second. There we go.
Great.
Hey, guys. Are we set? Are we ready?
Yeah.
You guys rock. Okay, perfect. We will begin with Act 2 of Pride and Prejudice at Longbourn, 2 weeks later. Enters Lizzie and Jane, and the townspeople look on.
It is unaccountable. In every view, it is unaccountable.
Do not give way to such feelings as these.
Mr. Collins is a narrow-minded, silly man, and the woman who marries him cannot have a proper way of thinking.
I must think your language too strong in speaking of them both. Consider Mr. Collins' respectability and Charlotte's steady, prudent character. You are to go to Hunsford soon, are you not? Did not Charlotte invite you to visit her there?
She did. I have told her I will come.
Then I am sure you will be convinced of their happiness by seeing them happy together.
No, Jane. The more I see of the world, the more it confirms the inconsistency of all human characters. Charlotte's marriage is only one instance. The other, well, I will not mention.
Poor jilted girls.
I knew it would never come off.
I entreat you, dear Lizzie, do not pain me by thinking that person to blame and saying your opinion of him is sunk. Women fancy admiration means more than it does.
And men take care that they should.
What will become of them now?
The eldest girls are practically on the shelf.
Jane, I am far from attributing Mr. Bingley's conduct to design, but thoughtlessness and want of resolution will do the business as well.
You persist, then, in thinking that his sister and Mr. Darcy influenced him against me?
I do.
But they can only wish for his happiness, and if he is attached to me, no other woman can secure it.
Well, they may wish many things besides his happiness. They may wish him to marry a girl who has all the importance of money, great connections, and pride.
I cannot believe it. If they thought him attached to me, they would not try to part us. If he were so, they could not succeed. I have this comfort immediately, that it has not been more than an error of fancy on my side, and that it has done no harm to anyone but myself.
Jane embraces Lizzie and exits.
They will be cast destitute upon the world.
If Mr. Bennet should die, that is.
Enters Mr. Bennet. So, Lizzie, I find your sister is crossed in love. I congratulate her. Next to being married, a girl likes to be crossed in love a little now and then. And when is your turn to come? I say, let Wickham be your man. He is a pleasant fellow and would jilt you creditably.
Oh, thank you, sir, but a less agreeable man would satisfy me. We must not all expect Jane's good fortune.
Enters Mrs. Bennet and Mr. Wickham.
Bennet, tea is in the drawing room. Mr. Wickham, you may tell my daughter that there is tea in the drawing room, as I do not speak to the wicked, ungrateful girls who refuse every offer that's made to them.
Your mother sends me to fetch you in for tea.
Are you sure you wish to be seen with me? An object of reproach and common gossip.
You are too careful with my dignity. Next, you should be saying that I must not enjoy a game of speculation, nor a dance and country dance. In short, I should be turning myself into Mr. Darcy.
Mr. Wickham, I do thank you for bearing with us just now. I promise you we shall be better company shortly. My aunt and uncle are coming for the holidays.
I've heard your mother speak of them.
Transition.
I've heard your mother speak of them.
Oh, you will like them, I know. My Aunt Gardiner is so kind, and my uncle, oh, he is most truly the gentleman. They are both everything that is agreeable, for all that they live in Cheapside.
There's a transition and enters Mr. and Mrs. Gardiner with Christmas presents. All the Bennets join them. Lizzie and Wickham are swept into the party atmosphere.
Happy Christmas, my dear sister. Henry, how have you been keeping yourself?
Happy Christmas.
I'm afraid this is not a cheerful holiday for us, sister. You have heard of our troubles?
Happy Christmas, Uncle.
Happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas.
My charming nieces. Perhaps you'll know what to do with these.
I fear I have little time for gifts and merriment, Uncle. I've been deep in the study of John Locke.
I'll take them.
Well, my dear, you look in spirits for a girl who has refused an offer of marriage.
Thank you, Aunt. I fear I am happy, much to my mother's dismay.
I have a proposal which I hope will make you happier still. Your uncle and I wish to invite you to tour with us this summer.
Oh, I should like that above all things.
We have not quite determined how far it shall carry us, but perhaps to the lakes.
Oh, my dear, dear aunt, what delight! What felicity! Adieu to disappointment and spleen. Oh, what are men to rocks and mountains?
Miss Elizabeth, your presence is required. There are gifts awaiting you.
Oh, gifts? How
Yeah.
delightful.
Including one from me. Sweets for the sweet.
I shall be there directly. You see, aunt, you see how ridiculous she is?
Lizzie, you are far too sensible a girl to fall in love merely because you are warned against it. And therefore, I am not afraid of speaking openly. Seriously, I would have you be on your guard with Mr. Wickham. Do not involve yourself in an affection with which the want of fortune would make so very imprudent.
You need not be under any alarm. Mr. Wickham shall not be in love with me if I can prevent it.
Elizabeth, you are not serious now.
I beg your pardon. I will try again. At present, I am not in love with Mr. Wickham, no. But he is, beyond all comparison, the most agreeable man I ever saw. Oh, I see the imprudence of it, that abominable Mr. Darcy. All I can promise you is not to be in a hurry. I will not be in a hurry to believe myself his first object. When I am in company with him, I will not be wishing. In short, I will do my best.
Then I am satisfied.
Come, sister, we're opening the gifts.
Yes, leave Lizzie to think of all the clever things she's going to say to Lady Catherine de Bourgh when she finally meets her.
You are going to see Charlotte.
She asked me most particularly to visit. I am to leave in a fortnight.
Give our love to Mr. Collins.
Pray, do not mention that abominable man, I beg you. To think that Charlotte Lucas will be mistress of this house, and that I might live to see it.
Well, Mrs. Bennet, we must hope for better things. Let us flatter ourselves that I may be the survivor. Lights change, music up, exits all but Lizzie. There's a transition into Hunsford Parsonage. Enters Mr. Collins and Charlotte.
Miss Elizabeth, I trust you had a pleasant journey. Let me express my utmost gratitude, my delight, I should say, in your honoring Hunsford with your presence.
Marriage has not altered, Mr. Collins.
Your family are all in good health, I hope?
Yes, indeed. They send you and Charlotte their felicitations.
Come this way, Miss Elizabeth. This is Hunsford Parsonage, our humble abode.
Regard Mr. Collins in all his glory, displaying the
neatness of the entrance
and the
good proportion of the rooms,
its aspect and
its furniture.
It's as if he wishes to make me feel what I have lost in refusing him.
And, Miss Elizabeth, you will have the honor of seeing Lady Catherine de Bourgh tomorrow evening. I see your looks of astonishment. Who could have foreseen such an intention as this? But it is true. We are to dine at Rosings. Lady Catherine is all affability and condescension.
Oh, Lizzie, she is a very respectable, sensible woman indeed, and a most attentive neighbor.
Very true, my dear. That is exactly what I say. She is the sort of woman one cannot regard with too much deference. Lady Catherine, may I beg the honor of introducing Miss Elizabeth Bennet. Miss de Bourgh, may I introduce Miss Elizabeth Bennet.
Do you play and sing, Miss Bennet?
A little.
Oh, then sometime or other we shall be happy to hear you.
Miss Elizabeth would be honored, madam.
Do your sisters play and sing?
One of them does.
Why did not you all learn? The Miss Webbs all play, and their father has not so good an income as yours. Do you draw?
No, not at all.
What, none of you? Has your governess left you?
Oh, we never had a governess.
No governess? Your mother must have been quite a slave to your education.
I assure you, ma'am, that was not the case.
Are any of your younger sisters out, Miss Bennet?
Yes, all.
All 5 out at once. Very odd. The younger ones out before the elder are married. Your younger sisters must be very young.
Yes, my youngest is not 16. But really, ma'am, I think it would be very hard upon younger sisters that they should not have their share of amusement, because the elder may not have the means or inclination to marry early.
What Miss Elizabeth means to say.
Upon my word, you give your opinion very decidedly for such a young person. Pray, what is your age?
With 3 younger sisters grown up, your ladyship can hardly expect me to own it.
Mr. Cole,
cannot.
sound of despair.
You cannot be more than 20. I am sure, therefore, you need not conceal your age.
I am not 1 and 20.
Indeed.
This entertainment of dining at Rosings has been repeated about twice a week, and every such engagement is the counterpart of the first. There is dinner, followed by the pronouncements of Lady Catherine, followed by a game of whist, followed by...
Miss Elizabeth, such an honor. You cannot imagine who just now arrived at Rosings.
Oh, my wretched luck.
Miss Bennet, pray let me introduce you to Colonel Fitzwilliam.
I am pleased to make your acquaintance, sir.
I'm delighted to make yours, Miss Bennet.
And my nephew, Mr. Darcy. Miss Bennet, Mr. Darcy.
Mr. Darcy and I are already acquainted.
Indeed.
I too am delighted to see you again, Miss Bennet.
Fitzwilliam, come here. I desire news of your dear father, the Earl.
Fitz joins Lady Catherine and the others. Lizzie is left alone with Darcy.
How very suddenly you all quitted Netherfield last November, Mr. Darcy. Mr. Bingley and his sister were well, I hope, when you left London.
Perfectly so, thank you.
I think I have understood that Mr. Bingley has not much idea of ever returning to Netherfield again.
It is probable that he may spend very little of his time there in the future. He is at a time of life when friends and engagements are continually increasing.
If he means to be but little on Netherfield, it would be better for the neighbourhood if he should give up the place entirely. For then we might get a settled family there. But perhaps Mr. Bingley did not take the house so much for the convenience of the neighbourhood as for his own. If we must expect him to keep it or quit it on the same principle.
I believe...
What is this that you're saying, Darcy? What is it you're talking of?
We were speaking of Hertfordshire, madam.
Miss Bennet, Miss Collins, tells us that you play and sing beautifully. I hope you will honor us with some music.
Gladly. I only hope my poor fingers will not prove Mr. Collins' praise unworthy.
She seats herself at the pianoforte and begins to play.
Ah, music. It is of all things my delight. If I had ever learned to play, I should have been a great proficient, and Anne would have performed delightfully if her health had allowed her to apply. How does your sister Georgiana get on, Darcy?
Very well. I have never heard her equal, for her age.
Pray tell her from me that she cannot expect to excel if she does not practice.
I assure you, madam, that she does not need such advice. She practices very constantly.
So much the better. I have told Miss Bennet that she will never play really well unless she practices more. And though Mrs. Collins has no instrument, she is very welcome to play on the pianoforte in my housekeeper's room. She would be in nobody's way there.
Mr. Darcy moves to Elizabeth.
You mean to frighten me, Mr. Darcy, by coming in all this state to hear me? But I will not be alarmed, though your sister does play so well. There is a stubbornness about me that can never bear to be frightened at the will of others.
I shall not say that you're mistaken, because you could not really believe me to entertain any design of alarming you. And I have the pleasure of your acquaintance long enough to know that you find great enjoyment in occasionally professing opinions which, in fact, are not your own.
Your cousin, Mr. Fitzwilliam, will give you a very pretty notion of me and teach you not to believe a word I say. Indeed, Mr. Darcy, it is very ungenerous in you to mention all that you knew to my disadvantage in Hertfordshire, and give me to leave Say very impolitic too. For it is provoking me to retaliate, and such things may come out as will shock your relations to hear.
I'm not afraid of you.
Let me hear what you have accused him of. I should like to know how he behaves around strangers.
You shall hear then, but prepare yourself for something very dreadful. The first time of my ever seeing him in Hertfordshire was at a ball. And at this ball, what do you think he did? He danced only 4 dances. And I'm sorry to pain you, but so it was. He danced only 4 dances, though gentlemen were scarce. And to my certain knowledge, more than one young lady was in want of a partner. Mr. Darcy, you cannot deny the fact.
I had not at that time the honor of knowing any lady in the assembly beyond my own party.
True. And nobody can ever be introduced in a ballroom. Well, Colonel Fitzwilliam, what do I play next? My fingers await your orders.
Perhaps I should have judged better, had I sought an introduction, but I am ill qualified to recommend myself to strangers.
Shall we ask your cousin the reason of this? Shall we ask him why a man of sense and education is ill qualified to recommend himself to strangers?
I can answer your question without applying it to him. Is it because he will not give himself the trouble?
I certainly have not the talent which some people possess of conversing easily with those I've never seen before. I cannot catch their tone of conversation, or appear interested in their concerns, as I have often seen done.
My fingers do not move over this instrument in the masterly manner which I see so many women's do. They have not the same force and do not pronounce the same expression. But then I have always supposed it to be my own fault, because I would not practice.
You're perfectly right. You have employed your time much better. No one admitted to the privilege of hearing you can think anything wanting.
Darcy! Fitzwilliam, of what are you speaking now? I must have my share of conversation, you know.
So, here's the thing that is very odd. I keep meeting Mr. Darcy in the park. Do you not think it strange? That is to say, to see him once was a coincidence, but I told him it was a favorite haunt of mine. That he continues to walk here is vexing. And he asks peculiar questions. Do I like Hunsford? What is my opinion of Mr. and Mrs. Collins's happiness? And just yesterday, we were talking of Rosings, and he said, very offhand, that I should see the private room someday, as if I should be staying there. Perhaps he is thinking of Colonel Fitzwilliam?
Ah, Miss Bennet, I've been making the tour of the park. Are you going much farther?
No, I should have turned in a moment. Do you certainly leave Kent on Saturday?
Yes. Darcy does not put it off again. But he arranges the business just as he pleases.
Ah, and if not able to please himself in the arrangement, he has at least great pleasure in the power of choice.
He likes to have his own way very well. But so we all do.
I imagine he brought you down here with him chiefly for the sake of having somebody at his disposal. I wonder he does not marry to secure a lasting convenience of the sort. But perhaps his sister does as well for the present. As she is under his sole care, he may do what he likes with her.
No, that is an advantage which we must divide with me. I am joined with him in the guardianship of Miss Darcy.
Are you indeed? And pray, what sort of guardians do you make? Does your charge give you much trouble? Young ladies of her age are sometimes a little difficult to manage.
Why would you suppose that to be the case?
You need not be frightened. I never heard any harm of her. In fact, she is a great favorite of one of my acquaintance, Miss Bingley. I think I have heard you say you know her?
A little. Her brother is a pleasant man. He's a great friend of Mr. Darcy's.
Oh, yes. Mr. Darcy takes a prodigious deal of care of him.
I really believe Darcy does take care of him. For something that he told me in our journey hither, I've a reason to think Bingley was much indebted to him.
What is it you mean?
What he told me was this, that he congratulated himself on having lately saved a friend from the inconveniences of a most imprudent marriage. But without mentioning names, I only suspected it to be Bingley from believing him the kind of young man to get, scrape of that sort.
Did Mr. Darcy give you his reasons for the interference?
I understood there were some very strong objections to the lady. Goodbye, Miss Bennet. I shall see you at Rosings tonight, I hope. Miss Bennet?
What? Oh, yes. Goodbye. Mr. Darcy was the cause. His pride and caprice were the cause of all that Jane suffered. Still suffers. There were some very strong objections to the lady. The objections of her having one uncle who is an attorney and another who is in trade. To Jane herself, there could be no objection. Neither could anything be urged against my father and my mother. Well, but I am convinced that Mr. Darcy's pride would receive a deeper wound from the want of importance in his friends' connections than from their want of sense. Oh, he has done this out of the worst kind of pride.
She arrives at the parsonage. Mr. Collins awaits her anxiously with Charlotte.
Oh, Eliza, where have you been? We have been wanting to leave Rosings this past quarter hour.
Charlotte, I do not think... That is, Oh, Charlotte, I am very unwell.
She exits.
Unwell? Is she not coming? I fear Lady Catherine would be very put out. Miss Elizabeth? Miss Elizabeth?
Oh, leave her, Mr. Collins. We can make her excuses.
Look at these, Jane's letters.
Lights up on Jane, as if she was reading from her letter.
My dear Lizzie, I must confess that I feel my spirits a little lower today. Perhaps it is the rain, but would be weak indeed to continue to be grieved over, but I will not repine. It cannot last long. You will be forgotten, and we will all be as we once were.
So unlike her usual cheerful style. Oh, dearest sister, made wretched by that arrogant, conceited, hard-hearted Mr. Darcy.
Excuse the interruption, Miss Bennet. Mrs. Collins told me you were ill, and I wished... I have come in hopes of finding you better.
I'm completely recovered, thank you.
In vain have I struggled. It will not do. My feelings will not be repressed. You must allow me to tell you how ardently I admire and love you. I must tell you that I have long felt you to be the most agreeable, charming woman of my acquaintance. I do not know how my affection began, and though I have tried to suppress it, I could not. Throughout my reason opposed my inclination. My knowledge of your family obstacles, which should have precluded any attachment, have long prevented the acknowledgement of my regard for you. But, Miss Bennet, this knowledge, my very character, must bow to the strength of my affection. Your beauty, your character have completely overcome my sense of the inferiority of your connections. I care not that the world may see this union as beneath me. Miss Bennet, may I say, Elizabeth, in spite of all, I do love you, and I anxiously await the words of your acceptance. Words that will make me the happiest of women.
In such cases as these, it is, I believe, the established mode to express a sense of gratitude for the sentiments avowed, however unhappily they may be returned. And if I could feel gratitude, I would now thank you. But I cannot. I have never desired your good opinion, and you have certainly bestowed it most unwillingly. I'm sorry if this causes you pain, but it is to be hoped that the feelings which you tell me have long prevented this proposal will soon overcome any regret you now feel.
And this is all the reply which I am to have the honour of expecting. I might perhaps wish to be informed why, with so little endeavour at civility, I am thus rejected. But it's of small importance.
I might as well inquire why, with so evident a design of insulting me, you chose to tell me that you liked me against your will, against your reason, even against your character. But I have other provocations. You know I have. Do you think any consideration would tempt me to accept the man who has been the means of ruining, perhaps forever, the happiness of a most beloved sister? Can you deny that you have separated her from Mr. Bingley?
I have no wish of denying it. Towards him, I have been kinder than towards myself.
And on the subject of Mr. Wickham, what can you have to say?
Take an eager interest in that gentleman's concerns.
Who that knows his misfortunes can help it?
His misfortunes? Yes. Yes, his misfortunes have been great indeed, yes.
Or infliction.
And this is your opinion of me. I thank you for explaining it so fully. But perhaps these offences might have been overlooked had not your pride been hurt by my honest confession of the scruples that had long prevented my forming any serious design. Had I flattered you, but disguise of every sort as my abhorrence, did you expect me to rejoice in the inferiority of your connections?
Oh, you are mistaken, Mr. Darcy. If you suppose the mode of your declaration affected me, except that it spared me the concern which I might have felt in refusing you, had you behaved in a more gentlemanlike manner. You could not have made me the offer of your hand in any possible way that would have tempted me to accept it. From the very beginning of my acquaintance with you, your arrogance, your conceit, your selfish disdain for the feelings of others built so immovable a dislike that I had not known you a month before I felt that you were the last man in this world I could ever be prevailed on to marry.
You have said quite enough, madam. I perfectly comprehend your feelings, and have now only to be ashamed of what my own have been. Forgive me for having taken up so much of your time, and accept my best wishes for your health and happiness.
He exits. Elizabeth stands, overcome with emotion. There's a transition as Mr. Collins enters, very solemn.
Lady Catherine was most seriously displeased last night. Most seriously displeased. I could hardly account for your absence. Miss Elizabeth, are you at all attending?
I'm so very sorry. I cannot stop thinking of that.
I hope you will be well enough to attend her this evening.
That he should have been in love with me for so many months.
Miss Elizabeth.
In spite of family, in spite of everything.
What is it that you say?
Pray excuse me, I must go for a walk.
You're not ill again, are you? Is she ill? This is very, very dreadful. What would Lady Catherine say? God.
The transition and Collins exits. Lizzie walks.
Tell me what you think. I know I should be gratified to have inspired unconsciously so strong an affection. But his abominable pride, his shameless avowals of what he did with respect to Jane and Mr. Wickham. Surely you agree that he deserves no consideration.
I've been in the grove some time in the hope of meeting you. Would you do me the honor of reading this letter?
Yes, of course. Good day, Mr. Darcy. My dear Miss Bennet, I write without any intention of paining you, or of renewing that offer which last night was so disgusting to you.
But you have laid to my charge two offences of a very different nature which must be answered.
Answered? Impossible.
As to the first, that I willfully detached Mr. Bingley from your sister, I can say only this. I watched Bingley. His partiality for your sister was beyond what I had ever witnessed in him. Your sister I watched too. Her look and manners were open, cheerful, and engaging as ever, but without any symptom of real regard.
Contemptible.
If you had not been mistaken here, I must have been in error. That I was desirous of believing her indifferent is certain.
Certain, indeed.
But I will venture to say that my decisions are not usually influenced by my hopes. But there are other causes. The unfortunate connections of your mother's family were nothing in comparison to the total want of propriety so frequently betrayed by herself, by your 3 younger sisters, and even by your father. You must pardon me, it pains me to offend you. If I have wounded your sister's feelings, it was unknowingly done. Now, with respect to that other accusation of having injured Mr. Wickham, I can only refute it by laying before you the whole of his connection with my family. Mr. Wickham's vicious propensities.
That must be false.
And his want of principle,
That cannot be true.
which he was careful to guard from my father, could not escape the observation of a young man so close in age to himself. My excellent father died about 5 years ago, and his attachment to Mr. Wickham was to the last so steady that he bequeathed him in his will a valuable family living. Shortly thereafter, Mr. Wickham came to inform me that,
Having finally resolved against going into the church, I hope you will not think it unreasonable for me to expect some more immediate monetary advantage. I have some intention of studying the law.
the business was soon settled. He resigned all claim to assistance in the church and accepted in return.
£3,000?
But 3 years later, he applied to me again.
My circumstances
He assured me, and I had no difficulty believing it.
are exceedingly bad. I have found law a most unprofitable study and am now absolutely resolved on being ordained.
You will hardly blame me for refusing to comply with this entreaty. After this period, every appearance of acquaintance was dropped. How he lived, I know not. But last summer he was again most painfully obtruded on my notice. Concerning this next circumstance, I feel no doubt of your secrecy. About a year ago, my sister Georgiana went to London. Thither also went Mr. Wickham.
Georgiana, upon my word, you're quite grown up.
Her affectionate heart retained a strong impression of his kindness to her as a child.
You're everything that's charming.
In short, she was persuaded to believe herself in love.
It's your brother. He will never countenance our affection.
And to consent to an elopement. Wickham's chief object was unquestionably my sister's fortune, but I cannot help supposing that the hope of revenging himself on me was a strong inducement. Had they not been found out, his revenge would have been complete indeed.
No, this cannot be true. Oh, my head is spinning. When I first met Mr. Wickham, his confidences, I thought myself honored. Were they proper? Was I proper? He boasted of having no fear of seeing Mr. Darcy, yet he avoided the Netherfield ball the very next week. And what Charlotte said of Jane.
It has always been my opinion that Jane hides her feelings all too well.
And my family.
5,000 a year?
Are we dining with the officers?
Captain Carter is the divinest flirt.
Thank you, Mary. You have delighted us long enough.
The justice of that charge. Undeniable. Did you see this? I, who prided myself on my discernment, laughing at the follies of others as you laughed. Had I been in love, I could not have been more wretchedly blind. But vanity, not love, has been my folly. Pleased with the preference of one, offended by the neglect of the other, reason was driven away where either were concerned. Till this moment, I have never known myself partial, prejudiced, absurd.
So Miss Elizabeth Bennet comes home today.
Still without a husband, I've heard.
She's had every opportunity.
A shame, really, but beggars should not be choosers. As they exit, enters Lizzie.
There she is! Lizzie, over here!
How good of you all to come meet me, dearest Jane.
I've missed you every hour.
And I have much to tell you later.
So let us hear what happened since you went away. Have you seen any pleasant men? Have you had any flirting? I was in great hopes that you would have got a husband before you came back, Lizzie. You and Jane will be old maids quite soon, I declare.
Did you buy a new bonnet, Lydia?
I do not think it is very pretty, but I thought I might as well buy it as not. Lord, I almost forgot. You must congratulate me on my great piece of good luck. I am to go to Brighton.
Whatever for?
The militia are leaving Meryton to camp in Brighton for the summer.
Yes, and Mrs. Forster, Colonel Forster's wife, has asked me to stay with her there.
I do not see why Mrs. Forster should not have asked me as well as Lydia.
You must say goodbye to dear Wickham, but I shall be sure to give him a kiss from you when I see him again in Brighton.
Lydia!
La, Lizzie, don't be such a prude.
I mean, I had as much right to be asked as Lydia. And more, too, for I am 2 years older.
Here they are, Mr. Bennet. Here they are.
Exit townspeople and enter Mr. and Mrs. Bennet with Mary. Lizzie goes to greet them.
I'm so happy to be home. Father.
I am glad you are come back, Lizzie.
And how did you find the Collinses? How was Charlotte? I suppose she and Mr. Collins quite talk often of their having long gone when your father is dead. Inside there.
Exits all except for Lizzie and Mr. Bennet.
Sir.
Yes, my dear.
Lydia is to go to Brighton.
So I have heard.
And what is your opinion of this venture?
This is my opinion. Lydia will never be easy when she has exposed herself in some public place or other, and we can never expect her to do it with so little inconvenience to her family as under the present circumstances.
If you were aware of the very great disadvantage to us all which has already arisen from Lydia's imprudent manner, I'm sure you would judge differently.
Already arisen? Has she frightened away some of your lovers? Poor little Lizzie. Do not be cast down. Such squeamish youths as cannot bear to be connected with little absurdity are not worth regret.
Sir, our importance, our respectability in the world must be affected. Excuse me, for I must speak plainly. My dear father, if you will not take the trouble of checking Lydia's exuberant spirits, she will be, at 16, the most determined flirt that ever made herself and her family ridiculous.
Do not make yourself uneasy, my love. Wherever you and Jane are known, you must be respected and valued. And we shall have no peace at Longbourn if Lydia does not go to Brighton. Colonel Forster will keep her out of any real mischief, and at any rate, she cannot grow many degrees worse without authorizing us to lock her up for the rest of her life. There's a transition. Lights up on Mrs. Bennet and Lydia. In a frenzy of packing, Kitty is also there, sulking.
Lydia! Lydia! Here you are, with nothing packed and Mrs. Forster coming in an hour.
Kitty will help. I have to choose my hats.
Oh, I hope you will be well ready. Kitty, put these in Lydia's trunk. There's a good girl. Don't pull them up for pity's sake.
It's too unfair. Why is Lydia allowed to go to Brighton? Why must all the officers go there too?
Happy to have the opportunity to bid you farewell.
Yes, farewell.
I shall think of you often. How was your time at Hunsford? Did you find Lady Catherine everything I said?
She entertained us frequently, especially after Mr. Darcy arrived.
Mr. Darcy? He was at Rosings?
Yeah, we saw him almost every day.
Oh, hapless fate.
Not at all. Mr. Darcy improves on acquaintance.
Indeed. It is in address that he improves, for I dare not hope that it is in essentials.
Oh no. In essentials, I believe, he is very much what he ever was.
Enters Kitty carrying a large bundle. She crosses the stage.
Now Lizzie's going to Derbyshire. Why cannot I go to Derbyshire?
We were to visit the Lakes, but it was impossible for my uncle to leave as early as we had hoped.
And now you are to go to Derbyshire instead.
My aunt wished it.
My. While you were there, you must pay a visit to Pemberley.
I cannot think we will.
You must. And see, the parish that I should have had. And of course, pay a call on Mr. Darcy.
Exits Wickham, enters Kitty lugging a heavy trunk. She crosses the stage.
Lydia is to go to Brighton, Lizzie is to go to Derbyshire, and Mary took the last muffin at breakfast. Why does everyone else get everything?
Exits Kitty. There's a transition. Enters Mr. Gardiner with a map and Mrs. Gardiner. They join Lizzie as if on their travels.
My love, look at this. Pemberley, just a few miles off. We must visit tomorrow.
Lizzie, should you not like to see Mr. Darcy's home?
Oh, dear no. I really would rather not tour another great house. We've been through so many.
If it were merely a fine house richly furnished, I should not care about it myself.
But the grounds are delightful.
They have some of the finest woods in the country.
Apparently we're going to Pemberley.
There's a music transition, and the stage is set for Pemberley. Enters a housekeeper.
This is the Great Hall. The paneling, which dates back to the days of Charles II, has been recently restored by the present Mr. Darcy.
I was told your master is not presently at home.
No, but we do expect him tomorrow with a large party of friends. If you'll follow me, please, I will show you the late master's study.
Mr. Gardiner follows the housekeeper while Lizzie and Mrs. Gardiner look out a window.
Never have I seen a place for which nature has done more, or where natural beauty had been so little counteracted by an awkward taste. To be mistress of Pemberley would have been something.
Come away from the window, Lizzie, and see these portraits. Our friend, Mr. Wickham.
Yes, that picture is of the son of my late master's steward. He has now gone into the army, but I'm afraid he has turned out very wild. Now, this is a portrait of my master, and very like him.
I have heard much of your master's fine person, but Lizzie, you can tell us whether it is like or not.
Does that young lady know Mr. Darcy?
A little.
And do you not think him a very handsome gentleman, ma'am?
Yes, very handsome.
I'm sure I know none so handsome, nor a better man anywhere.
That is very much to his credit. I'm sure that you should think so.
I say no more than the truth. I have never had a cross word from him in my life. The sitting room.
This fine account of him is not quite consistent with his behavior to our poor friend, Mr. Wickham.
Perhaps we might be deceived.
There now, you have seen the house. Let me show you out the door and call William the gardener. He can take you round the grounds.
How old a home is Pemberley, my dear? Do you think?
I should think mid-17th century or thereabouts.
Enters Mr. Darcy. Lizzie turns. They see each other for a second and a pause.
Miss Bennet, I'm delighted to see you again.
Mr. Darcy.
Your family at Longbourn, they're quite well, I hope.
Yes. Thank you. Yes, they're all quite well.
I had not thought, that is, I did not know you were to be in Derbyshire. How long do you mean to stay?
Not long at all.
I see. Well, good day, Miss Bennet.
Why did I come? Why did he come? It must seem as if I'm purposely throwing myself in his way again.
Miss Bennet, will you do me the honor of introducing me to your friends?
Yes, of course. Mr. Darcy, may I present my uncle, Mr. Gardiner, and my aunt?
I'm happy to make your acquaintance.
You have a beautiful property. Mr. Darcy, I do not think we have seen its equal in all our travels this summer.
Thank you.
We were just conjecturing upon the date of this building. The stonework leads my wife to believe that it must have been constructed during the Restoration, but I believe it is earlier.
I am hoping that you can prove him wrong.
I am afraid, Mrs. Gardiner, that I must disappoint you.
That he should even speak to me is amazing. He is so civil to my uncle and aunt. I don't know how to account for it. Do you?
Mrs. Gardiner, Look over there. By the river, did you see that trout?
Oh dear. Had I known your stream contained fish, Mr. Darcy, I should have never allowed Mr. Gardner to walk this way. He's an inveterate angler.
Enjoy the sport, Mr. Gardner.
I do indeed. However, as I live in London, I have not yet often the opportunity to practice.
Then I invite you to fish here as often as you choose. While you continue in the neighborhood, if you apply to William, he will supply you with tackle.
Why, I thank you, sir. Your offer is most kind.
We did not think to intrude upon your homecoming, Mr. Darcy. We were informed that you would certainly not be here till tomorrow.
That is true. Some business with my steward occasioned my coming a day earlier than the rest of my party. They will be joining me early tomorrow. Among them are some who will claim an acquaintance with you, Mr. Bingley and his sister. And there is one other who more particularly wishes to be known to you. Will you allow me, or do I ask too much to introduce my sister to your acquaintance?
I would be most happy.
Perhaps you would like to come into the house, all of you, for some refreshments.
You are very kind, but we must not impose in such a manner.
Well, then I must hope to have the pleasure of your company at Pemberley on another date. Miss Bennet, I'll bring my sister to wait upon you soon.
He exits, and they proceed, transitioning to the inn.
Well, Mr. Darcy seems perfectly well behaved, polite, and unassuming.
There is something a little stately to him for sure, but it is confined to his air and it is not unbecoming.
Lizzie, how can you tell us he was so disagreeable?
I have never seen him so pleasant as this morning.
From what we have seen of him, I should not have thought that he could have behaved so cruelly to Mr. Wickham.
I think Mr. Darcy is not so very bad, nor Mr. Wickham so very good as we had previously thought. Can it be for me that his manners are thus softened? If he wishes to make me known to his sister, surely he has forgiven me for my former prejudice at least.
Enters a servant.
Miss Bennet, a letter for you. Leastwise, miss, it looks to be for you. The writing is not very plain.
Oh, it's from Jane. Thank you. Gracious. I'm surprised to have received it at all. Jane wrote the direction very ill. A most unexpected and serious occurrence. Lydia has run away with Mr. Wickham?
And Lizzie, imprudent as that match would be, we are anxious, very anxious that it take place. We have reason to fear that Mr. Wickham does not mean to marry Lydia at all.
Oh.
Our distress is very great. My father is going to London with Colonel Forster instantly to try to discover her. What he means to do, I am sure I know not.
He will fight Wickham wherever he meets him, and then he will be killed. And the Collinses will turn us out before he is curled in his grave.
My poor mother is really ill and keeps her room. Could she exert herself, it would be better. But this is not to be expected. I cannot help earnestly begging you all to come here as soon as possible.
Oh, where is my uncle? I beg your pardon, but I must find Mr. Gardner this moment, this instant.
Good God, what is the matter? Look, I will not detain you a minute, but let the servant go. You are not well enough. Mistress, fetch Mr. Gardner immediately. Here, let me call your maid.
No, thank you. There is nothing the matter with me. I'm only distressed by some news which I have just received from Longbourn. It cannot be concealed from anyone. My youngest sister has run away with Mr. Wickham. You know him too well to doubt the rest. She has no money, nothing that can tempt him to marry her. She is lost forever, and I might have prevented it, I who knew what he was.
Is it certain? It's absolutely certain.
Yes. My father has gone to London, and Jane has written to beg my uncle's immediate assistance. But I know very well that nothing can be done. He is such a man to be worked on. How are they even to be discovered? I have not the smallest hope.
I am afraid you have been long desiring my absence, nor have I anything to plead in excuse of my stay but real, though unavailing concern. Goodbye.
It is all too late now.
Mrs. Bennet is revealed, still prostrate with grief, surrounded by Jane, Kitty, Mary, and Mrs. Gardiner. The townspeople are lurking in the background.
Oh, my dear sister. If I had been able to carry my point of going to Brighton with all my family, this would not have happened. But poor Lydia had no one to take care of her. Do you think my brother can help Mr. Bennet find them?
I am sure of it.
And when he does, he must keep Mr. Bennet from fighting Wickham. Oh dear, I have such tremblings, such flutterings, such spasms in my side and pains in my head.
Be at ease. Mr. Gardiner writes that he has persuaded Mr. Bennet to come home again. He will continue to look for Lydia, but there is no sense in...
What? Is Mr. Bennet coming home then? And without poor Lydia? Who is going to fight Wickham and make him marry her if he comes away?
Have you heard? Lydia Bennet has run off with George Wickham.
No.
No. I always suspected that wild young lady would come to a bad end someday.
He's such a mother.
And a father who cares more for his books than his children.
Mr. Bennet is much to blame. Uh-huh. Exits Jane, enters Mr. Bennet, Lizzie, Kitty, and Mary move to him.
Father, sir, I am so very sorry for what you have suffered.
Who should suffer but myself? It has been my doing, and I ought to feel it.
Do you suppose them to still be in London?
Yes, for where else can they be so well concealed?
Lydia used to want to go to London.
She is happy then.
Misfortunate as the event must be for Lydia, we may draw from it this useful lesson. A loss of virtue in a female is irretrievable. That one false step involves her in an endless ruin, and she cannot be too much guarded in her behavior towards the undeserving of the other sex.
Enters Jane out of breath with a letter.
Father, from my uncle in London.
Sir, what news does it bring, good or bad?
Read it out loud, for I hardly know myself what it is about.
At last, I am able to send you some tidings of my niece, and such as, upon the whole, I hope will give you satisfaction.
Oh, it is as I hoped, they're married.
They are not married, nor can I find there was any intention of being so. But if you are willing to perform the engagements which I have ventured to make on your side, I hope they soon will be. All that is required of you is a settlement of £1,000 after the decease of yourself, and during your life £100 a year. Can it be possible that he will marry her?
There are two things that I want very much to know. One is how much money your uncle has laid down to bring this about. And the other, how am I ever to pay him back?
What do you mean, sir?
I mean that no man in his right senses would marry Lydia on so slight a settlement. Wickham's a fool if he takes her for a farthing less than £10,000. Indeed, I should be sorry to think so ill of him in the beginning of our relationship.
£10,000?
Heaven forbid! How is half such a sum ever to be repaid?
I am sure I do not know. There's a transition, enters Mrs. Bennet, and she speaks all the Bennets assemble to meet Lydia and Wickham.
My dear, dear Lydia. She will be married. Married at 16. Oh, I long to see her. And dear Wickham too. How merry we shall all be together when we meet.
The Bennets are assembled to meet Lydia and Wickham for their homecoming. Enters Lydia and Wickham.
Mama.
Lydia and Mrs. Bennet embrace, and Lydia embraces her father, who receives her coldly. Mr. Wickham kisses Mrs. Bennet's hand.
Mr. Wickham! Oh, how charming.
It's something I would never have dared before, but now that we are related... Sir.
Mr. Bennet exits.
Mr. Bennet! Mr. Bennet! Well, never mind him, dearest.
Only think of it. It's been 3 months since I went away. It seems but a fortnight, I declare. Goodness gracious. When I left, I'm sure I had no more idea of being married when I came back again. Though I thought it would be very good fun if I was.
Very true, my dear. Shall we go in?
Ah, Jane, I take your place now, and you must go in second, because I am a married woman.
Exits all except Lizzie and Jane.
Lydia is Lydia still.
We must hope that they now live in so rational a manner as may in time make their past forgotten.
Their conduct has been such that neither you nor I nor anybody can forget it. It is useless to talk of it. I'm only sorry I spoke of it with you.
Mr. Darcy.
Jane, I want to hear from him when there is the least chance of doing so. I'm convinced that I could be happy with him now, when it is no longer likely we should meet.
Lizzie, Jane, what can you have been talking of all this time? Mamma wishes you to come in for tea. I was just telling her an account of my wedding. Are you not curious to hear how it was managed?
Not really. I think there cannot be too little said on the subject.
La, you are so strange. But I must tell you how it went off. We were to be married, you know, at St. Clement's. We breakfasted at 10, and I thought that it would never be over. For by and by, my aunt and uncle were reading me sermons that morning, as they did all the time when I was with them. Well, and so, just as the carriage came to the door, my uncle was called away upon business with that horrid lawyer, Mr. Stone. Well, I was so frightened, I did not know what to do, for my uncle was to give me away, and if it were beyond the hour, we could not be married all day. However, I recollected afterwards that if he had been prevented in going, Mr. Darcy might have done as well, and so as it happened.
Mr. Darcy?
Oh, yes, he was to come there with Wickham, you know. Oh, but gracious me, I quite forgot. It was to be such a secret.
If it was to be a secret, say not another word on the subject. You may depend upon our seeking no further.
Oh, certainly. We will ask you no questions.
Thank you, for if you did, I should certainly tell you all.
Lydia, the new muslins have arrived.
Coming, Mamma.
He exits with Jane. There's a transition, and during Lizzie's speech, we should feel time has passed or suspended.
Mr. Darcy at Lydia's marriage? What could it mean? How could he have been there? I must write my aunt at once and beg her to tell me. My dear aunt, was Mr. Darcy at Lydia's wedding? Please reply immediately if it is compatible with the secrecy that was intended. And if not, I shall surely be forced to resort to tricks to find out.
My dear, I did not think such inquiries would be necessary on your side. If you choose not to understand me, forgive my impertinence, but it is true. It was Mr. Darcy who found Wickham and Lydia. It was he who paid the whole of Wickham's debts and commission, some £20,000 to be frank.
But why?
He said it was because it was owing to himself that Wickham's worthlessness was not well known in Hertfordshire. However, it should not be surprised if he had another motive.
There's a transition, and Mrs. Bennet enters.
Mr. Bennet, my dear Mr. Bennet.
What now?
Bennet, such news. Mr. Bingley has returned to Netherfield. You must visit him, my dear.
Oh, no. Last year you promised if I went to see him that he should marry one of my daughters. But in the end, it ended in nothing. So I will not be sent on a fool's errand again. Mrs. Bennet argues with him under, and enters Jane, who joins Lizzie.
I begin to be sorry that he has come back. Not that I'm afraid for myself, but I dread other people's remarks.
Enter the townspeople, Bingley, Miss Bingley, and Mr. Darcy enters at some point in the discussion. Mrs. Bennet watches. So, Mr. Bingley has returned.
Poor Jane Bennet.
It cannot be that he will favour her again.
Mr. Bingley.
Talk. It's only for politeness.
Miss Bingley is with him.
If you should bring his sister, then it's just keeping up appearances.
And if his friend should accompany him.
Good gracious, Mr. Darcy. Oh, any friend of Mr. Bingley's will always be welcome here, to be sure. but else I must say that I hate the very sight of him. Mr. Bingley, I declare it has been this age since we have seen you. You have been very missed in this neighborhood, I do assure you.
You're too kind, Mrs. Bennet.
And your dear sister. Please, my dear, won't you sit down? Mr. Darcy? I began to be afraid that you would never come back again. A great many changes have happened in the neighborhood since you went away. Miss Lucas is married and settled. Also, one of my daughters, I suppose you have heard of it. Indeed, it was in the Times and the Courier. George Wickman to Miss Lydia Bennet. Did you see it?
Yes, indeed, Mrs. Bennet. And may I offer my congratulations in the hope that they will be very happy together.
It's a delightful thing, to be sure, to have a daughter well married. Mr. Wickham has gone to the regular militia in Newcastle. He has some friends, thank heaven, though not so many as he deserves.
Do you plan to make any stay in the country at present, Mr. Bingley?
At present, yes. I do plan to stay. I believe I shall do a little hunting.
Well, Mr. Bingley, when you have killed all your own birds, I beg you to come shoot as many as you can here on Mr. Bennet's manor. I'm sure he will be vastly happy to oblige you.
We must not detain you any longer, ma'am.
You know, Mr. Bingley, at the Netherfield ball, you promised to take us to a family dinner the very next week.
I was prevented by business. But I hope to have that pleasure sometime shortly.
Shall we say next Tuesday? And pray, Miss Bingley, you must come also. And Mr. Darcy, of course.
We would be delighted, I'm sure.
All exit except for Jane and Lizzie.
Now that this first meeting is over, I feel perfectly easy. I'm glad he dines here on Tuesday. It will then be publicly seen that on both sides we meet only as indifferent acquaintances.
Yes, very indifferent indeed. Oh, Jane, take care.
Do not think me so weak as to be in danger now.
I think you are in danger of making him as much in love with you as ever.
Enters Mrs. Bennet. Darcy and Bingley, the townspeople, watch as they gossip. Darcy, Bingley, Jane, and Lizzie move through some simple presentational movements. Perhaps it feels a bit like a dance. I saw Mr. Bingley's party visiting Longbourn on Tuesday.
Stayed until midnight by my reckoning.
Girls, that dinner was a splendid success.
Mr. Bingley was most kind.
Mr. Darcy said nothing.
Bingley, Jane, Lizzie, and Darcy change places and begin again.
Mr. Bingley and Mr. Darcy went again to the Bennet home on Thursday.
I heard they played the whole afternoon at charades.
Mr. Bingley was everything that was pleasant.
And Mr. Darcy said nothing. Why, if he comes to be silent, does he come at all?
There's a transition and Mary enters with Mr. Bingley.
Ma, Mr. Bingley is here. He was waiting by the door.
Bingley, what a delightful surprise. Where's your dear sister? Oh, you're alone. Oh, well, come in, do sit down. No, over there, next to Jane, that's right. Yes. Isn't this pleasant?
What is the matter, Mama? Why do you keep winking at me?
I did not wink at you. Come with me, my love. I wish to speak to you. Lizzie, my dear. Lizzie, my dear, I want to speak with you.
In a moment, ma'am.
Well,
Lizzie gets up reluctantly to join her mother, leaving Bingley and Jane alone to talk intimately.
you may as well leave them by themselves, you know. Mary and I are going upstairs to sit in the dressing room.
She exits, Lizzie sighs and waits, then turns to rejoin Jane and Bingley, but sees them in earnest conversation and turns away. Bingley goes to her, grasps her hand for a moment, then exits hurriedly. Jane embraces Lizzie.
It's too much, by far too much. I do not deserve it. Why is not everybody as happy?
I am so glad for you, so very glad.
I must go instantly to my mother. He's gone to my father already. Oh, Lizzie, if there were but such another man for you.
If there were to be 40 such men, I would never be so happy. No, let me shift for myself. Perhaps I may meet another Mr. Collins in time.
She exits. The townspeople gather, and Lizzie hears them.
Well, that was an unexpected turn of events.
I never thought it would come off.
Not what I would have predicted, but still.
Made the settlements.
She'll have plenty of pin money.
Now she can introduce her sisters to other rich men.
I'm so happy for them.
We hear a carriage and enters Mrs. Bennet.
Good heavens, Lizzie. Whose carriage is that? With a crest on the door. Gracious. Whoever can it be?
Lady Catherine de Bourgh?
Enters Lady Catherine magnificently. Mrs. Bennet sinks into a deep curtsy.
I hope you are well, Miss Bennet. That lady, I suppose, is your mother?
Yes. This is an unexpected pleasure, Lady Catherine. Will you walk into the house?
No, I see no reason for that. It is you I have come to see. You must know why.
I am not able at all to account for the honor of seeing you here, unless some message from Mrs. Collins.
Message from Mrs. Collins? Ugh. Leave us, if you please. A report of a most alarming nature reached me 2 days ago. I was told that Miss Elizabeth Bennet, would, in all likelihood, be united with my nephew, my very own nephew, Mr. Darcy. Though I know this to be impossible, I instantly resolved on setting off for this place that I might make my sentiments known to you.
If you believed it impossible, I wonder you took the trouble of coming so far.
Impertinence! Mr. Darcy is engaged to my daughter. Now what have you to say?
Only this, that if he is so, you can have no reason to suppose he will make an offer to me.
If you were sensible of your own good, Miss Bennet, you would not wish quite the sphere in which you have been brought up.
He is a gentleman. I am a gentleman's daughter. So far, we are equal.
True, you are a gentleman's daughter. But who was your mother? Who are your uncles and aunts? Do not imagine me ignorant of their condition.
Whatever their condition may be, if your nephew does not object to them, they can be nothing to you.
Tell me once and for all, are you engaged to him?
No.
And will you promise me never to enter into such an agreement?
I will make no promise of the kind.
Not so hasty, if you please. Tell the other objections I have already urged. I have still another to add. I am no stranger to the particulars of your youngest sister's infamous elopement. Is such a girl to be my nephew's sister? Is her husband, the son of his late father's steward, to be his brother? Are the shades of Pemberley to be thus polluted?
You have now insulted me in every possible method. I must beg to return to the house.
I take no leave of you, Miss Bennet. I send no compliments to your mother. You deserve no such attention. I am most seriously displeased.
How remarkable! How extraordinary that Lady Catherine should... that Mr. Darcy... Oh, and he is to visit us here today. Lady Catherine will most certainly meet him on his way coming from town. What do you think she will say to him? And what will he reply? With his notions of dignity, he will probably feel that her arguments contain much good sense. Oh, it is horrible, dreadful not to know.
Lizzie, Mr. Bingley is here and has brought that dreadful Mr. Darcy with him.
Oh?
No, you dislike the man, but pray walk with him, for Mr. Bingley and Jane should like to be alone. Go on, Lizzie, go on.
She exits.
Mr. Darcy, I'm a very selfish creature, and for the sake of giving relief to my own feelings, care not how much I may be wounding yours. I can no longer help thanking you for your unexampled kindness to my poor sister. Ever since I have known it, I have been most anxious to acknowledge to you how gratefully I feel it. Were it known to the rest of my family, I should not have merely my own gratitude to express.
I'm sorry, exceedingly sorry that you have ever been informed of what may, in a mistaken light, have given you uneasiness. I did not think the Gardiners were so little to be trusted.
You must not blame them. Lydia's thoughtlessness first betrayed to me that you had been concerned in the matter, and of course, I could not rest till I knew the particulars. Let me thank you again and again in the name of all my family.
If you will thank me, let it be for yourself alone. Your family owe me nothing. Much as I respect them, I believe I thought only of you. You were too generous to trifle with me. If your feelings are still what they were last April, tell me so at once. My affections and wishes are unchanged, but one word from you will silence me forever.
My wishes are changed. That is,
They kiss, and there's a transition. Enter the townspeople, they dance. Mrs. Bennet enters and speaks over the ring ceremony.
Oh, goodness gracious, Mr. Darcy! How rich Lizzie will be. What pin money, what jewels. Jane is nothing to it. Such a charming man, so handsome, so tall. I hope you will overlook us having disliked him so much.
I heard Mr. Darcy gave Miss Eliza Bennet his mother's jewels.
The whole new trousseau. And a Petsch phaeton with matching ponies.
Perhaps I shall meet my Mr. Darcy someday.
I shouldn't depend on it, my dear.
Now be sincere. Did you admire me for my impertinence?
For your liveliness of mind, I did.
You may as well call it impertinence at once. Confess it. You were sick of the deference and civility. Had you not been really amiable, you would have hated me for it.
What did you say that I did not deserve? Dearest, loveliest Elizabeth, you showed me how insufficient were all my pretensions to please a woman worthy of being pleased.
I perceive, Mr. Darcy, that you and I think very much alike, much more than I had previously supposed.
I believe that you are correct, Miss Bennet.
Common report has done you much injustice.
One should never listen to common report.
No. Nor common knowledge or common sense or anything common.
They embrace. The lights go down, and thus ends Pride and Prejudice. Wow. Round of applause. Thank you so much to everyone. I have on my end, as soon as I end the stream, this will also be present for everyone to see. But we had 55,800 playbacks, which is utterly insane. That's 3 times as much as our most viewed live stream. So that is really groundbreaking and incredible. And hopefully those who are watching right now, we have 2,378 that are currently present. Just recall, if you have not made a donation, I'm sure someone listening is just, they're on edge. They don't know what to do, because I've been in that position before where I'm like, I don't know, should I give? Should I not? Please do. This is an amazing cause. If you guys continue to donate every time we do one of these readings, we'll continue to do them throughout the shelter in place. Different ways you can support, primarily actingforacause.org. Make a donation, even $5. You can probably give something if you can. It's much appreciated. Thank you, with much gratitude. We have, if you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, of course, then you'll be in tune every Friday at 4 o'clock. We have a different reading. Next week, I will announce next week's reading right now. So we will be doing Jane Eyre.
Yay!
Nice.
Very exciting. And I'll be announcing cast details on I've been kind of bad. I've been announcing it on my Professor Brando Instagram, but I will do a better job. And if you follow Acting for a Cause with the number 4 on Instagram, then I'll announce cast details there too. If you guys want to support, there was a cool animation of a peacock that's done by our artist, Gabe Matazans. He is commissioned, so we do pay him for that. If you want to support, go to actingforacause.org and donate on the Patreon, which does not go towards the donations. It goes towards the production back behind the scenes, help cut some of those costs. And but number one, if you're going to donate, first go and donate to the cause. That is the most important priority here. I just wanted to also thank the adapter, because Pride and Prejudice is a book, not a play. And the adapter, Christina Calvert, is from Chicago. When I thought I want to do an adaptation of this, I wanted to do this over Zoom among our other plays, I immediately thought of Christina's amazing, amazing rendition, really unparalleled. She captures Jane Austen's beautiful sense of humor. And Christina did this also pro bono.
Thank you.
gratis license, so thank you very much. But speaking of gratis, you know, the team of volunteers that's obviously the most important are our team of actors. And in concluding this amazing run, I just wanted to thank each of you individually. So I'm going in the order of what my screen shows. But to start off, Lexi, you're incredible. You're a young talent. You stepped up to the plate. Lexi's an incredible producer as well. And what I really love about you know, just your generation, and I think that all of us are somewhat a part of it, but your generation is just so good about being quick about your ambitions. Like if you want to be a producer and you're turning 18 or just turned 18, or that's insane. That's unbelievable. So thank you, Lexi. Thank you for being an amazing person and someone to look out for. You know, there was a few actors who had messaged us on Instagram who had seen a previous live read. And so I just wanted to start out by thanking a few of these. To start off, Kat, who is incredible, who just has so much joy in her presence. Everyone should check out Kat's post. She has this like boxing dummy that is her boyfriend for the quarantine, and is very, very brilliant. I love what you put out there in terms of content. Kat is brilliant and is with the wonderful Kevin at CAA, who helped make a lot of these readings possible. Going on, Madelaine, another person who you know, while not being directly through Instagram, we had heard that you wanted to participate in a reading, or your team wanted you to, and I was just so honored because, you know, to share your talent, fan base. You're a busy person. You're on Riverdale. You're an amazing show and many amazing productions that you're a part of, and I just felt like you didn't have to do this. Out of everyone, and you shared your platform, and I thank you dearly for this. We have a few returning people, and so Ronan, you are a king among men. Ronan joined the production. He was the second to last person who literally I call on like Thursday morning. I'm like, Ronan, can we have you for this? There's a role. It was going to be the same person was going to play 2 roles. And I wanted to split it up a little bit further, and I wanted you to play Mr. Collins. And Ronan was like, let me think about it. Yes. Like that was how quick. It was just like so incredible. So thank you. Daniel, you were also someone who had reached out, had loved Romeo and Juliet, and just another amazing talent. Daniel also is very outspoken about issues of our time, and I think that he's a voice that you should be listening to. Going over to Andy. Andy, amazing. Andy, you are just such an amazing presence, and you're so assertive, and you played both characters that you played so wonderfully. And I really, you know, to me, it was just one of these things that I realized, you know, we're seeing another young talent in the making who's just so incredible. And I know that you're also multifaceted and that you're part of many different career paths. So I'm just excited to see where life takes. Sam.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you. Sam, you're incredible, an amazing talent. Another person who had done us the pleasure. We didn't have to find Sam. Sam came to us and was like, let me do something. And I was like, right away, was like, I got a part for you. Can you do this one on Friday? Again, within the span of a week, these are cast. And Sam was just a quick yes, and so passionate and so good about analyzing his character even, and talking about you know, the direction part of these things, which is very fun to do. And he gave me the pleasure of having that discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let me make sure I'm going in my order here, and I'm like, I slightly went off of order. So Matthew, our resident Brit, who most kindly did not criticize all of our accents. Thank you. Matthew is incredible. Another person who I think is very wise, and we've talked about an amazing short film and different things that he's in the midst of producing and making and writing. And it's just cool to be in touch with an artist who doesn't let time and the times limit him in any way, shape, or form, who's passionate. Thank you. As I go through, I want to make sure Sydney Lemon, who comes from this remarkable family in Hollywood. Jack Lemmon, who's a legendary actor, is her grandfather. Sydney graduated from Yale program, and Sydney is obviously a talent to contend with. Not just all of that background, but the fact that Sydney did not come in to play Mrs. Bennet. During the rehearsal, I was like, can you place Phil and read this role for now? And then immediately afterwards, I sent to everyone else who was involved in the casting of this and said, please stop, don't do anything. I really want Sydney to read this role because she's so talented and so gifted, so wonderful. So Sydney was great. Thank you very much. As I go through, Jacob was, he was someone who I think that we were chasing for a while. I'm personally a big fan of Euphoria. I think that Jacob has one of the most refreshing interpretations of a villainous character in, I think, the last few decades of television. It's really incredible. And to have you come in and play this romantic lead with such purpose and also be so perfectly articulate and passionate about the cause. I received a message from you, and I thought that it was just so pitch perfect. We were lucky to have you on board. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I think I've covered, no. I was gonna say I have one more, but no, I have two more. Melissa, who did such an incredible job, carried the show as Elizabeth Bennet. Very excited. I mean, I am just such a fan in terms of she's going to be in the Heights, which is the live play musical that I've seen the most in my life. I'm just such a big fan. And I know you're going to carry that movie too. I mean, you have the responsibility of carrying everything. She's in Mexico right now, doing this from another part of the world. We also have our, both Sam and Jacob are in Australia, completely different time zones. So all three of you in that sense, thank you. And I think Ali is our last one. I just want to make sure. And Ali has been in more readings than any other actress. So I was saving her for the last because Ali joined this. She was the last person, last minute. We got her on board. And that was not because she was last minute. That was because we were in our invitation. And Ali to me is someone who will be an icon many years to come. Like 1,000 years from now, people will be talking about Ali. I cannot wait to have Ali again for another reading. And you're kind of our the person who appears in you're like the Hitchcock of these reading series. You appear in every single one, and I can't wait for more. Thank you so much all for participating. Thank you. I can't thank you enough. And I didn't do that for any other reading in terms of talking to each individual actor on here, but I just felt like it was absolutely necessary because you all are just such wonderful, wonderful people for participating. This was our biggest reading yet with our biggest cast. And I just felt, it was very special. And I will end this on just one more note to thank the audience. You all are so incredible. It would not be possible without you. And on that note, adios. Thank you very much. And
Thank you.
Friday at 4.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.